destination for the latest news, audio, and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose, and all things hockey in Manitoba. Join Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and Drew Mindell as a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Well, it's not quite that trio that Mandy just introduced, but it is a special edition of Illegal Curve Hockey. This is a draft edition. It's our favorite weekend of the year, Connor, because there's no time like the draft. It's everybody's excited, everybody's pumped up. There's been lots going on in Jets land. Not a lot of signings, of course, but since we did our last show on Saturday, and we'll get through it all. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about whether the Jets are going to get in or not, what they're going to do about Hrabchak and Drew. This, of course, is a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show as we give you first round coverage. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Connor Hrabchak, who's going up and down in his screen. But Connor, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Having a good summer so far. The Stanley Cup final went on way too long, and I don't know. It's that we're already at the draft. It feels weird, but I'm glad that, after this, there's a little bit of a lull after free agency, that is. And I'm glad to kind of get this over with. And we'll see if the Jets pick tonight. That's a lot of intrigue in Jets land.
There is a lot of intrigue, and, the chat is lively, and we welcome everyone. Thank you for spending your Friday evening with us. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribing to this channel. I mean, that's an important thing, whether it's for us or Winnipeg Sports Talk. Speaking of Winnipeg Sports Talk, we might have Huss and Remus joining us like they did last year, live from the draft floor. We'll find out if we can get them. And speaking of that duo who's in Vegas, they did just post their interview with Kevin Cheveldayoff. Don't watch it now, but I did post it about 10, 15 minutes ago, so you could kind of get it set up if you wanted to hear from the always chatty Jets general manager, who really says a lot but doesn't say
except
a lot.
Except for when he's asked about Hrabchak and Drew, then he's not as chatty.
He was definitely
I don't know if you saw the quote, but it was like 15 seconds. Usually if you've sat in a Kevin Cheveldayoff or watched his pressers, he'll get asked a question and talk for 2.5 minutes. The Hrabchak and Drew answer, I think, was like 12 or 13 seconds front to back. So I don't know. Read into that how you will. But
I think, there's a lot of folks are doing a lot of reading. And David Martino says, did you see the rumor that Montreal and Minnesota are interested in Hrabchak? Well, I mean, as I jokingly tweeted earlier today, David, I think 31 teams are interested. At least I've read articles by the writers that cover them saying that their team should be interested in Hrabchak and Drew. And I'm pretty sure I read one or two about the Jets retaining Hrabchak and Drew, right, Connor? So a lot of folks are interested. Again, as I tweeted maybe half an hour ago, I'd be shocked if Kevin Cheveldayoff made a trade in the Central. Like, he'd have to have his socks knocked right off if order to make a trade where he deals with makes a trade with Minnesota, or even in the trade with the Pacific team. Like, if he's making a deal, he was going to see Hrabchak and Drew at most twice a year from an Eastern Conference team. That's my position. What do you think about that?
I'm kind of with you on that. It's interesting. Minnesota at least has the 13th pick, and they have Marco Rossi, another young player who's kind of voiced their displeasure, let's say, with their current situation. So the opportunity is there. If there is a Central Division team, I think it would be Minnesota. I think it might be Utah with 1 million. They have like 1 million picks and a ton of cap space. Maybe they would be in on. I mean, like you said, everyone is in or should be in on Hrabchak and Drew, a 20-year-old Michigan player who's been phenomenal the last 2 years and now wants out. Like, everyone should be inquiring. As for who has the assets to actually do it, I think Minnesota would be the most likely. But I responded to a tweet from Nick Lynham on Twitter, basically on the Minnesota front, Russo's article. And I was basically saying, like, the Jets Wild rivalry, we really want Hrabchak on the other side of that. Like, do you remember what those games are like? Like, you want Hrabchak and Drew, the pest, to be like coming into Canada Life Center 2 times a year doing that. So I don't know. I also can't see him trading in division, but if it were to be, I think it would be Minnesota, just because they have Rossi in the 13th pick and a lot of the assets to get it done.
Well, and there's been a lot of articles, a lot of typing, if you will. I was going to say pens, but people don't write their articles anymore, right, Connor? So a lot of people have written about this online, and whether it's our friend Murat, whether it's Kenny and Mike, and they've talked about teams. Murat outlined 3 teams. His 3 teams were Columbus. Makes a lot of sense. They've got a lot of prospects. He mentioned Ottawa, and he also mentioned San Jose. So and then Mike and Kenny, they expanded their list to 8. So there's a lot of teams. And look, this is the big unknown, is whether, Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, again, to me, the the problem I have with this whole thing, other than I think something stinks in Denmark, and it's just all that we're being told doesn't make sense. So I would just say that whatever we've read, whatever you've heard, take it with a grain of salt, because I just have a suspicion that there's more to this than meets the eye. And but regardless of that, because we have to deal with what we know, with the facts that are out there. For me, I look at this and I say, okay, well, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, what was the quote from Dreger last night on Insider Trading? But I posted it today. We're in win now mode.
Right.
They're in win now mode, I think is the way. I don't remember how he said it. Oh, the Winnipeg Jets are in it to win it. Sorry, that was the quote. In it to win it. So the question becomes, if you get a first round pick in this draft, that's great. But who's helping you in let's say you get somewhere from 7 to 15. Who's helping you in 24, 25? Who's helping you in 25, 26, right? Like, we're talking about Rutger McGroarty, and the thought was that he'd be going in the AHL next year, potentially, and unless he's on a bad team. And if he's not, then he may not be, you know what I mean? Like, so you're talking about a guy who's drafted in 2022, who won't be impactful potentially for 2 years. So you draft a guy in 24, when's he impactful for? Again, I understand the idea of, restocking the cupboard, but from a Jets perspective, from a win now team, or in it to win it, sorry, how are you acquiring draft picks? It's something that has confused me about some people writing that with respect to Nikolai Ehlers. Yeah. And similarly, it confuses me as to the idea of, like, okay, you're going to get a first round pick, you're going to restock the cupboard, but to what end for the team that wants to win right now? You didn't sign Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck to 7-year extensions to win in 4 or 5 years.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you heard the Kevin Cheveldayoff presser. He was asked about Rutger by Marat, and then that answer was like 12 seconds. And then very next question was about Ehlers. And the first thing that Kevin Cheveldayoff brought up was like, oh, well, it's very similar to me standing here last year with Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele with 1 year left on their contracts. Like, he immediately brought up those situations and was much more like upbeat, much more chipper, said Nikolai Ehlers is a big part of what we have going forward here. I think that was the quote. Whereas to Rutger, he was like, Rutger is a prospect within our organization right now. So if you just take those two quotes at face value, it looks a lot more likely that Nikolai Ehlers is a Jet for the next 5 years than it is Rutger McGroarty is, since he immediately compared it to, when he signed the other two guys to long-term extensions. But like you said, if they're in it to win it, or if they're in win now mode, then a lot of the questions that Jets fans would have would be, well, then can Rutger McGroarty not help you win right now? Can he not help you win next season? If this is the disconnect between the Jets and Rutger McGroarty, do they think Alex Iafallo will have a bigger impact on the Jets winning a playoff series next year than Rutger McGroarty? Is that the disconnect? Like, where's the Morgan Barron? Does he have a bigger impact on the Jets next season than Rutger McGroarty? Like, I think that's where the disconnect is. If they're in it to win it and they want to kind of slow play McGroarty, that's where we're at. And if they are in win now mode, Ehlers is a big part of that. And I think he has a lot more time to be patient, given what we saw last year with Hellebuyck and Scheifele in the Ehlers situation than he does with McGroarty. And like you said, he's got a lot of suitors for McGroarty. So he might just be taking a massive bidding war right now, and he'll decide on the draft floor. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, and I think that's a good point. And speaking of the draft floor, we're reliably informed that the San Jose Sharks are on the clock, so they're going to get ready to make their selection. You can read it out if you. I think we don't have to take a big leap of faith to figure out who's going to be the first overall pick this year.
It's not celebrated now.
But I think after that we may have some interesting. That this is where the draft starts to get interesting. Is usually picks 3, 4, 5, 6, because really when a team, like always the Red Wings, it seems like, take a little bit of a leap and a little jump, then suddenly things kind of, get messed up a little bit. And that's always what is exciting. And of course, what are Jets fans waiting for, but maybe someone to announce? We have a trade to announce, which I can tell you, being in the building in New Jersey in 2013, to answer Larry's question, because he said we're not at the draft. We didn't go. We haven't been to the draft since 2017. As he went, that was the year I was supposed to go. My grandmother was sick, so I chose to stay in Winnipeg. But that was the last draft. That was the Chicago draft, when the Jets drafted Vesalainen in the first round. But and then I think it was Dallas the next year. And we haven't been back. And sometimes it's a little bit easier to do more. We get more done when we're not at the draft. You do a lot of schmoozing at the draft, a lot of chatter. You don't get a ton of work done. At least I don't. So for me, it's always better to be more efficient here with my time, being with all of you, focused on, of course, this and illegalcurve.com, which is your home for all the latest Jets and Moose news. Okay, well, we'll keep talking about McGroarty, of course, because again, that's going to be the big question mark. The one thing that we do know, a little certainty, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. We'll talk about it more. Of course, join us tomorrow, 9:00 in the morning. We don't know when we're going to end. We know we'll start at 9. We may go a little bit long. We'll see. Maybe we can get the Jets' second round draft pick. If they make it 37th overall, maybe we'll try and get them on the show. So we don't know what time that show is going to end, but we know it'll start at 9:00 with Drew and Ezzy back on that show. Although I sent Connor a link to that inadvertently instead of this one. So he may be on the show too tomorrow. But the one thing we do know is Dylan DeMello signed his big deal. We were expecting it to happen a little bit earlier in the season, in the off season, I should say, because, I think, he said on May 2nd, I really don't want this to kind of, hopefully we've got a few months to get it done, but hopefully it won't take that long. Well, unfortunately for Dylan DeMello, it did take that long. He did take a little bit longer to get the, top pairing right side defenseman signed. But one of the things that he spoke about, I mean, Jimmy Toth, who actually is going to be our guest tomorrow on the show at 9:30, Jim and Cam Poitras had him on Jets at noon. And one of the things that he talked about when they had Dylan DeMello on, Jim said, well, why Winnipeg? Why choose to stay here? Now, when he was asked about it on May 2nd, he did say, like, look, this place has come to mean a lot for me and my family. And, it's a place I can definitely see myself settling down. And so when he asked him, he said, there's so much that goes into, I'm just going to read you the quote. There's so much that goes into it. First and foremost, the fit in Winnipeg has been fantastic ever since I've been acquired there from Ottawa on and off the ice. My wife and I and my son, we really have enjoyed our time living in Winnipeg, and our community has been fantastic. In addition to the above, he went on to say his neighbors are amazing people, some folks that he'll remain connected to even after he's done playing hockey. And then he also, of course, praised the team playing alongside Josh Morrissey. And as he said, playing in front of the best goalie in the world. But he ended his answer with this: Winnipeg was first choice. Just really happy to get it done and to call Winnipeg home for at least 4 more years. And to me, I pay attention to words. And we, that's one of the things we do in the media, and we record them and we analyze them. And one of the things that I was impressed by with respect to Dylan DeMello, and feel free to jump in if there's something that's happening on the draft that's interesting, but we'll just keep the Jets talk rolling for the first little bit, because usually it's pretty expected.
Yeah.
But his answer was so significant, because too often guys will say, and it always amazes me, because I think to myself, like, you'll be a hero. Like Dylan DeMello, that's an answer that's a heroic answer. That's an answer every single person, whether you're a fan of the Jets or not, if you live in Manitoba, you want to hear that kind of answer, because that's a person who's committed to the community. He's a good player. He's not just like some guy like, okay, he's not a good hockey player, but he committed to the community. He's a good hockey player, committed to the community, could have made probably more money. He said, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But I thought that was important, that his first answer was talking about the impact of the community. And then he talked about the teammates. And then he talked about, and one of the other things he said, and I want to make clear, he talked about choosing a place where he thought he could win. And that was important for him. But I just thought the fact that his answer resonated so significantly, because it spoke to what Winnipeggers know, is that this is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. But so many people pigeonhole this community because they hear negative. And as Dylan DeMello said, you come in, you're here for 12 hours or 48 hours, maybe. You don't really know anything about it. You don't know anything about the food experiences. You don't know anything about the outdoor experiences. And then when you're exposed to it, it's a totally different lay of the land than what you might see by just jumping in here for, like I said, for 48 hours.
Yeah. And I didn't hear that quote specifically, but to hear you analyze it like that is really interesting, because there's so much more that goes into that decision than what does happen on the ice. And what did happen on the ice is he's been a top pairing defenseman every year here. He's had great chemistry with Josh Morrissey. Those two put up incredible numbers last year, both in like offensive numbers, defensive numbers, plus minus, whatever type of numbers you like to look at. They excelled at it. And yes, he struggled in the playoffs. Like, newsflash, so did everyone, right? So that I kind of throw out the window. And 4.9 million, I said this the other day as well, I think it gives them the flexibility where Dylan DeMello doesn't have to be a top pairing guy. Agreed. 2 years from now, when he's 33, and say the Jets have Elias Salomonsson, the development path goes fantastic and he becomes a top pairing NHL defenseman, the best possible thing that could happen to him over these next 3 years. Then Dylan DeMello can be your second pairing guy. And at 4.9 million with the cap going up, that's a digestible number for that role. And at 4.9 million, you're still getting a cheaper top pairing guy who put up great results with Josh Morrissey. And then the part you talked about, you factor in all the off ice stuff, the fact that he loves Winnipeg. It was his number one choice. He loves the room, his teammates. Like, I think that this is just like an A+ signing. I do think, as for market value, they didn't really get like a hometown discount, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's worth it when you take into the fact that what I just brought up in the digestible flexibility that they have, where he can be a second pairing, or even later in the deal, the last year of his deal, he could be a third pairing guy at 4.9 million, and that doesn't sink you completely. So I really like that aspect of the deal, and he's been great in a top pairing role. So no complaints from me. I thought it was a great deal.
Yeah, and look, I'm with you. I think Dylan DeMello is an excellent defenseman, and he's proven to be a very good D partner to Josh Morrissey. Do I think that if you're the Jets and you want to be a competing team, do you want to maybe augment that top side right pair and get, hey, maybe they can get Jacob Trouba. He's apparently on the block. And he and Josh
And then
Morrissey.
Line,
Yeah,
and then
well,
Line,
I mean,
and
a lot of people
bring
are,
it all back.
trust me, we're going to be talking about it all. They're bringing there's a reason why, Connor, the expression getting the band back together is a real one, because people want to see that. They want to see, that old magic and see if it can return. But no, but I mean, like from a realistic perspective, and that goes to the idea of buyouts. And I know people were wondering if the Jets were going to be interested. Ken Weeb was on with Huss and Reem today talking about that. His feeling and the sense he got, I think he said as of yesterday, was that that wasn't an area the Jets were going down. So it seems unlikely that they're going to do a buyout of Neil Pionk or a buyout of Nate Schmidt. I didn't get a chance to hear the full Cheveldayoff presser, so I'm sure those were questions that were asked. But again, like I said, I'm not certain as to what his answer would have been if he was asked that question. But like I said, Kenny's pretty dialed in. So if he's thinking that it's not something that's realistically happening, then I guess there's probably a good reason for that. So, I mean, again, like I said, from a Jets perspective, but it's just, when you look at this team, and I said this on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show maybe a couple weeks ago, with Dylan Samberg moving up and taking on more responsibility, with the expected departure on July 1st of Brendan Dillon. To me, Dylan DeMello looks like the perfect guy to kind of mentor, bring him along. And then if you've got that kind of strength on your second pairing, right, with the guy like Samberg, who's got all this upside, and you got DeMello, who's just a solid defenseman, especially if you've got him in your 3-4, and then you can acquire. No, I mean, that's a big ask, but acquire that right side guy. Now, of course, it's not going to work if you don't make moves, because, of course, from a salary cap perspective, the Jets just can't do it with the way it's currently constructed. Of course, the other thing that Drager said today, he doesn't say a lot, but what he did say was that he said there was nothing really doing with McGroarty and Ehlers. He said Cheveldayoff was taking calls, but he did say that they're still trying to see if there's a potential deal in place with Sean Monahan. From your perspective, with Sean Monahan, but as an aside, they're certainly taking a long time. I mean, what has this been, like 15 minutes for one pick?
Yeah. Well, I saw Joe Thornton came up and announced Macklin Celebrini did go first overall. No surprise there. Now the draft kind of begins a little bit. There's a bit of a question mark at who Chicago might take here. I'm looking at my TV screen and I see Steve Nash. I don't know why, but I'm not listening, but I do see him. And I saw Joe Thornton announce the pick. So that's what's happening. There's NBA stars, Canadian NBA stars at the NHL draft. That's Chicago. Yeah, it's been it's 6:22 and we're not even through 2 picks yet. But
having been at the draft, I know that they do the roll call, which is actually, I have to say, especially when you're in an Eastern city, is actually amazing. So we were ironically, because we're talking about Nikolai Ehlers in 2014, when we were in Philly, so essentially they have the guy who goes up and he'll say Anaheim, and then they'll get on the microphone, they'll say here, and then they'll go to the next team, the next team, the next team. And usually they're booing anyways, but for their rivals, the Philly guys are just going bananas. So they'll be like, they say Pittsburgh, and then all of a sudden everybody from Philly goes sucks, and then they'll say New Jersey, and then they'll all yell suck. It's actually amazing. So I will say Philly was definitely a city that was worth going to, just for the Rocky Stairs alone. Almost seeing Drew Mindell take a ball off the face in the 14th inning. Sorry. After a Chase Utley homer that was hit about 500 feet in the air. Chicago's now made their selection. Can't see who it is actually, but we'll see that in a sec. The pick is in, is what they're saying on TV.
Okay.
But we're waiting for, of course, the excitement of, we've got a trade to announce. Oh, that's what I started to tell you. So going back to the 2013 draft, when we were in New Jersey, and Bettman is just getting booed and booed and booed by the crowd. Classic. But the funniest part about it was that he goes, "You're gonna want to hear this," and of course it was like, it was, I think, the trade for Corey Schneider when the Devils acquired Corey Schneider. So it's just very funny how that kind of came about, if you will. So very good times. The crowds really do make it exciting at the draft, and so we'll see what happens with we'll see what happens in Vegas. Of course, the Sphere, everybody's saying how good an experience it is. Huss and Remo, what, have you talked to them at all?
I have. They've been. I've talked to Remus more because he's been kind of on the technical side of things. Sorry, I can't speak, but they've been on the technical side of things, and they were trying to get things going. They got their flights canceled on Wednesday, so they missed their first ever show in 3 years. They were pretty bummed about that, but then Thursday got it going. Some difficulties. They're doing it from the hotel room, the show, and the mics and echoes and everything's happening. But today's show went great. They had Marat live in the room there, and then Ken Weeb was unable to join them live, but still joined them. And it went great. And there it is. Lev Shanov, the big right-handed defenseman from Michigan State, goes second overall. I thought they might have gone Demidov, which was, the winger option to pair with Connor Bedard for the next 10 years, but they go defense. So that's in division as well. You'll see a lot of that kid playing against the Winnipeg Jets for the next 10 years.
There you go. Well, probably not right away. He'll be, I think actually, if I recall correctly, I don't know if he's still there, but I'm pretty sure Jim Slater, former member of the GST line, which folks will remember, is, I believe he's either a coach or he does something. He has something, because that Michigan State is where he went and played his college hockey. And I believe he's from Michigan. I don't know if he's from East Lansing or not, but he's somewhere in that area. But anyways, so we'll see that Michigan State, big rival of, the Jets, Rutger McGroarty, currently the Jets, Rutger McGroarty. We don't know if he will still be.
We'll see.
As Kevin Cheveldayoff said earlier today, Connor, he's still a member of our organization. So we'll see how much longer that
within the organization. Yeah,
exactly. A prospect within the organization. That was not
which is a factual statement. It is true.
Absolutely.
Can't dispute him on that one.
Yeah. So, and getting maybe going back to the Rutger talk from your point of view, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, are you like, the truth is also there's no urgency. Like, I think Kenny called these like pressure points, like these ideas where there's these events that are happening and everybody's in the room and there's opportunity and you're going to have more conversations than you would, generally speaking, otherwise. But like, are you dealing him? And then the other thing also that you have to factor in, if you don't deal him, is he coming to development camp next week? Because development camp is supposed to get underway on Tuesday. Now, college players don't necessarily have to come. He was already here last year.
Zero chance.
But like
zero chance he shows up.
Could you imagine?
No way.
Like, I mean, if he's still Jets property, that would be
yes.
I
could see it where he still is a Jet through tonight and through free agency and all these things. Like, this is classic Jets and classic Kevin Cheveldayoff, where, as early as last year, Scheifele and Hellebuck, and it's like, oh my goodness, they have to make this trade because this player doesn't want to be here, Rutger McGroarty, or this player has 1 year left on their deal, Nikolai Ehlers. And it just drags on a little bit longer than you might think. Patrick Laine, he's going to get traded. Oh, but then he starts the season with the team, and then after one game, he gets dealt for Dubois. Like, it just always seems to play out a little bit longer than you might think.
Yeah.
And if Rutger gets through tonight as a Jet, I could see him, still being a Jet through the next week or two. But I just do not see a scenario in any way, shape, or form where he shows up to development camp. That would be the most covered and like intriguing development camp ever. To get like Rutger in front of a mic and be like, dude, what's going on? Like, get his side of the story or his viewpoint. But if he doesn't want to be a Winnipeg Jet, which is what's being reported, then he's not going to come to Winnipeg Jets development camp 2 weeks after he says that, or after that is reported. So
yeah, we should make it clear. His side is saying nothing, as are the Jets.
Right.
The reports are, this is coming from
those
elsewhere.
are reports. Yes.
Yeah. These are all reports, but the irony, of course, is that people were questioning the veracity. And I said, well, there's a lot of smoke there. I mean, Friedman, you could say, well, Friedman's wrong X number of times. A lot of guys are wrong. Guys are human. They make mistakes. But now Friedman said it. Marat has said it. Mikey McIntyre has said it. Weber's said it. Like, all of these guys aren't wrong. like
and
I
they're
said,
reporting what sources are telling them.
Mhm.
Like Marat, I remember his article, the last sentence was, he was like, I'm under the impression that he'll be traded before the draft.
Yeah,
Which was his take on the situation.
sure.
But the entire thing on Rutger and everything he said, a league source is telling me that Rutger views his path to the NHL as best suited in another organization, things like that. That's from Marat. He's reporting it, but that's he says it in the article. A league source is telling the Athletic. That's someone within the inside that's feeding him this information, and then Marat reports it.
Right.
Which, if Marat ends up being wrong, it's not really him, it's the source. Like if Rutgers signs his ELC tomorrow, a wild turn of events, then
I'm going to
it's
call
really,
everybody out, including me.
then it's really just this league source that got it wrong. And like Marat's not wrong for reporting
I'd imagine
it.
there's
He's
also,
told
but
that,
just to be clear, I'd imagine there's also more than one. Guys generally
yes,
won't go
if
with
when
just
there's
one.
this many people reporting it,
Yeah.
there's definitely more than one.
Yeah, because not everybody has one source. Like, it's not like everybody's
Yes.
like, oh, hey, let's call
What
up Bob from wherever, and we'll get it
from
from Bob.
Michigan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be nice. If I like Bob, hey, send me your number if there is a guy named Bob. But yeah, I just think like it's just going to be an interesting scenario, and it's fascinating to watch.
it is.
And we've got the Anaheim Ducks are the pick is in. The Ducks are at the podium. Pat Verbeek, little ball of hate. He's going to make the selection right now. By the way, folks in the chat, please chime in. What's the consensus right now? What are you thinking in terms of the draft at the Sphere? Did you watch the awards show last night? I did not. I'm sorry. And I heard it was terrible. I heard
I heard
Hassan
a
Remus-
lot. Yeah. Well,
I mean,
Hassan Remus loved it. Apparently,
no,
they
but
were
I
like
mean,
they
I'm
they
not
said
saying
on their show.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, like, to me, like Matt Friend, I actually know he's pretty funny. Like, I've seen that comedian. I've seen it. He does a great Trump. Like, he's a pretty funny comedian. But a problem with hockey players, if they don't know who it is, they're just kind of like dry, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like it just seemed like the only thing I really saw was his attempted. That's cool. They're showing right now on the TV for those folks who are not watching the draft, maybe listening on this podcast, which you'll be able to hear later. But they were showing the Sphere, and then they're showing the kids get selected and
On the outside of the Sphere. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, who was taken just now?
Seneke.
Oh, okay. He's the one. He's the wild card one. I know a lot of the guys at the elite
Yes.
prospects were saying this kid has really risen up the draft ranks, and he's a pretty big wild card. They saw him as someone who had a pretty high ceiling.
Beckett Seneke. That's one of those names, like a Rutger McGordy or I don't know. There's a lot of awesome names in the draft all the time, but yeah, just said they're third in Oshawa scoring on the board there. But yeah, Anaheim last year, they kind of shocked the board when they took Leo Carlson ahead of Adam Fantilli.
Yeah,
everyone had penciled in Fantilli at 2. They took Leo Carlson. It was like, whoa. And then Carlson had a good year, like in limited action for the Ducks. And Seneke here is putting on the brand new Ducks jersey, the orange. What did you think? Which one did you like more, the Ducks rebrand or the Kings rebrand?
I mean, the problem with the Kings one is it's not really a rebrand. It's just
it's
going back to the
neither
old
is the Ducks, really.
I know, but the Ducks is like, I don't know. They're both nice. I mean, I love that one because that's like, to me, reminds me of Gretzky. So like it's the early 90s. I think it's the early 90s Kings one. Maybe it's not actually. Maybe
it's around there. Yeah.
Yeah. But
because Gretzky wasn't in like the purple, was he? He was in the
no, he never played. No, that was like that was the early 80s, would have been the yellow and purple and stuff like that. But But no, I mean, and sorry, I got to give Jack his kudos because, we've been talking about the Jets and focused on the Jets, and I forgot to mention Connor Hellebuck. I mean, I guess I was probably going to get to it because before we started kind of getting sidetracked, making fun of the award ceremony, the only thing I was going to say I did pay attention to, of course, was in fact the win of Connor Hellebuck, his second ever Vezina. He's of course been nominated 4 times for it. He won in 2020, but that was the bubble year. So there was not quite the same kind of hype behind it, but of the goalies who played more than 25 games last year, he had the second best save percentage at 921. He had the 4th best goals against average at 239, played the second most games at 60, had the second most wins, 37. And if you like goals saved above expected, which most folks do, finished number 1, according to the folks at Money Puck, with a 33.1. So he did pretty good.
And second place was Thatcher Demko with 22.
That's right.
So I mean, beat him by 11 goals saved above expected, which is a lot, by the way.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
And of course, won the William Jennings, which of course is a team award. And, one of the things that Connor Hellebuyck said, and I think, again, notable, was he said, this is an individual award, but it's not won individually. Thought that was an appropriate line from the Jets minder. And then the other thing he said, and again, it kind of speaks to that idea of like becoming part of that community. He said, I'd like to thank all the Winnipeg fans, especially the ones that showed up here tonight. Thank you guys. Your support is so appreciated. We need you guys, and I appreciate you coming out. So, I just thought that was, pretty interesting comments. And again, showing appreciation for this community. And again, like, this is a community, and I'm not going to put Winnipeg above everybody else. I mean, I will, but I won't, because I think a lot of their communities, care passionately about their hockey teams, but I can see it. We see it in the numbers. Look, I had nothing posted yesterday really on the website, and it was off the wall, the numbers I was seeing, just because people were curious and they're refreshing. And I implore you to keep that going, keep refreshing, keep hitting that, going to illegalcurve.com for all the latest Jets and Moose news. But, to me, Connor, that's the kind of the sentiment from the Jets netminder is just, it's the dialed in element from him, right? Just that focus on winning and on becoming, but again, not that individual winning. And I'm trying to find the quote. Yeah. So I'll get your thoughts, and then I'll come back to the other quotes that he said in his follow-up media availability.
Yeah. The reason it escaped me, and thank you, Jack, for bringing it up, but we've known Connor Hellebuyck was going to win the Vezina for a few months now, maybe even like 5 months now. Like, he had the Vezina sewn up pretty early on this season. That just speaks to how good of a season he truly had. And he brought up Rick Bowness and the systems that he put into place. And the quote, I'm not getting it correctly, but it was something along the lines of, he's put like the foundation in place for me to have success, for the team to have success.
Well, I'll be reading that quote. Don't you worry.
And Scott Arniel, he brought in Arniel as well. But the thing that bugged me the most is, like, I had all this content ready to go. Like I said, we all kind of knew Hellebuyck was going to win the Vezina. He was one first place vote off from being a unanimous winner. And I found out, because for all the other awards, the Hart, the Norris, the Calder, you see the Professional Hockey Writers Association, they post the ballot of all the votes, and you see like there's 150 first place votes for the Hart or whatever. It's like a crazy amount. But for the Vezina, it's actually voted on by the general managers. And I don't know, did Bill Zito, the Panthers GM, who Bobrovsky got the other first place vote, was it him that voted Bobrovsky first place? I'd have to think so. But Hellebuyck got 31 out of 32 first place votes. It would have been so nice to see him be a unanimous winner. His second one. He's only the second U.S. goaltender since, I believe, the 90s to win 2 Vezinas, him and Tim Thomas. And that's just a special conversation to be in. He's the best goalie in the league. He was the best goalie in the league this past season. And you can get to the quotes now, because a lot of them were good, and a lot of them spoke to what you said earlier about it not being an individual thing. It's one as a team, as the Jennings was as well.
Yeah. And his focus, like, as I said, it was really about winning the next one, which is the Stanley Cup. He said, someone asked him about getting ready, and he said, I just started skating and ramping it up for another year. There's only one thing left on my mind, and that's the Stanley Cup. Anything I can do to get there, I'm going to start doing. Talking about what he can do to get, we talk about that 5% addition that these teams can make, these players can make this summer to try and get better, try and improve. And then the full quote that he said about, Rick Bowness was, I think Rick is an elite coach. I think what he did for us is going to make my career. I truthfully believe that he has helped get the best out of me and the best out of our team. Those are pretty significant words from the Jets netminder, right? Because he only had Rick Bowness for 2 years, but clearly the impact that he had was significant. And as you said, and I didn't include that in the comment, but one of the other things that Connor Hellebuyck had said was that the framework was in place, and that Scott Arniel is going to kind of follow that path that they've, had success with, but at the same time, make tweaks. And, we've heard it from the new assistant coaches who, again, both were on Jets at Noon. We have that on illegalcurve.com if you didn't get to hear their interviews with Cam and Jim. But both guys talked about the PK, the power play, and how they're planning on making changes. So, from a team that did pretty well, right? We tend to forget, we think that this Jets team wasn't very good based on how they did in the playoffs, but they had a very good regular season. Now they're to a man, Dylan DeMello talking about the things that they need to do differently. So Lidstrom just got selected, the 4th overall pick. That's an interesting one because Columbus was the big talk as to whether they were going to make a deal or not, and they chose Lidstrom. So that's Caden Lidstrom. So that's a pretty big pick, a Canadian kid. And sorry, I'll get off the Connor Hellebuck thing for a second just to talk about the Blue Jackets, because I think the Blue Jackets are relevant. Because I think that a lot of people see them as a potential trade partner for the Winnipeg Jets. And I mentioned Murat, who wrote about them in The Athletic, which you can read, of course. We have a link to it in the morning papers. But I just think that Columbus does seem to make a lot of sense, right, Connor? Like it's interesting because who would you reunite Rutger McGroarty with if you dealt him but 2 of his Michigan teammates, right? And
we're snowballing into a Patrick Laine discussion.
No, I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to go there. That's more of a Mike McIntyre thing. But although it was funny because when I was, looking for links for the papers, and I was just like, is Patrick Laine coming home and all this Patrick Laine stuff? I mean, I don't see it, but I mean, it'd be something. And let me tell you that just power play would certainly look a little different. But, and let me tell you, Cole Perfetti would have a whack of points because he'd be setting him up for laser beam after laser beam. But no, I just think that from there's the I know T. Conapoli is going to be happy because he's wanting the disgruntled prospect. I think he was the 5th overall pick in 2022. Jurich, right? The right shot defenseman. Hrabchak, sorry, the right shot defenseman who's he played for Cleveland and for Columbus last season. Again, I when I say stuff, I always try and qualify it that I'm not paying attention to Cleveland and Columbus, other than when the Jets are playing them. And the Moose don't, of course, play Cleveland anymore. Right. They used to back in the day. But in fact, I believe the Moose and the Bear, well, they might have been the Barons at the time. Now they're the Monsters. But I remember they did make a trade, and they made the trade for future considerations, which at the time I was like, what is exactly future considerations? Which of course turned out to be nothing. But anyways,
nothing. Yeah,
nothing. But anyways, but the commentary had been that he wasn't happy with his usage, and he was maybe potentially open for or to be dealt. So that's an interesting name for the Jets. But then the question is, do you have to? Is it a 1-for-1 with McGroarty and?
Well, I was going to say,
or is there a sweetener that you need to add?
Well, I was going to say, it wouldn't be the first time that the Jets and Blue Jackets had connected on a young disgruntled star for a young disgruntled star, 1-for-1. Like that's happened before. And I think Rutger McGroarty, if he were to go to Columbus, you brought it up, Fantilli and Gavin Brindley, his teammates at Michigan, they were aligned together. They were the best line in college hockey when they were together. So maybe that's where the Columbus side of things would stem from. You hear all these teams and you go, okay, well, why would it make sense for the other team? Yeah, the Jets might want to trade for David Hrabchak, but why would Columbus want him? Well, it would be to reunite that line as a young line that could really excel going forward and be a line for them and hopefully replicate that dominance at a higher level. David Hrabchak, if you're going for a young NHL ready right-hand shot defenseman, T. Conapoli's all over it. That would be probably the ideal return if that's the framework you are working under. And Columbus, them keeping pick 4 is interesting because Frank Saravalli was reporting that there was a lot of chatter about whether they'd move out. Same with Montreal, but Saravalli's tweeting now that they're going to keep this pick and make it. So it's a typical draft night. There's all this buzz and all this, this team might trade out, but everyone's keeping their picks so far. But to answer your question, Columbus, definitely something to keep an eye on. And Murat, in the article where he mentioned Columbus, also mentioned the Manitoban Denton Mateychuk, who was taken two spots ahead.
Don't get T-Kona going on that one. Because,
who was taken 2 spots ahead of Rutger in that draft. I believe 12th overall, Rutger was 14th. Yeah. He is not like a disgruntled star as Hrabchak is. From what I've read, he's not unhappy with his situation in Columbus. So that connects less than Hrabchak maybe. And the Jets have a lot of left-hand defensemen. But yes, Columbus. I'd keep an eye on for McGroarty because it makes a lot of sense for them.
And Jack is making a mention of the Sabres. I'm not sure if
Buffalo
he's
as well.
saying with respect to what we're talking about, which is McGroarty. Sometimes the chat isn't necessarily having the same conversation that we're having, but that's okay. That's the beauty of doing this show, whether it's a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. This is we've 40 minutes in, and there's been 5 picks. Not even 5 picks. I think we've done 4.
They're making the 5th pick right now.
And now they have someone randomly walking out. Who's making the pick? Is that Celine Dion?
Celine Dion is making the
for
pick
the Montreal
for Montreal.
Canadiens. All right.
Okay.
Oh, that's what we need. Let's delay this further for another 10 minutes. But okay.
It's Vegas, baby.
It's Celine Dion.
It's going to take all night.
She's a bit of an icon, so that's okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say, it's amazing that we're over 40 minutes in, and we're still only on pick number 5. But this is a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Connor Hrabchak, and we're chatting about we're talking about all things Jets primarily, which of course will continue tomorrow on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. That starts at 9:00. Again, the end time, we're not certain. Drew probably will bust out of there by 11 because, as the folks know, Drew doesn't like to go overtime. But Ezzy and I will try and guarantee you at least an extra half an hour, maybe an hour. And maybe what I'll do is, if Ezzy wants to leave, I'll get Connor to come on. He's already got the link. He can come on for the last half an hour. And of course, Jimmy Toth will be joining us at 9:30 to talk about everything in Jetsland. Well, the pick is in. Celine is about to. I wonder if she'll sing it. Do you think she'll sing that pick? Or do you
Sing
think
the
she'll
pick?
be like, ah.
Let's delay this.
Hey,
draft.
Elliot just said the same thing.
Yeah. Boom. Great minds think alike.
There we go. Elliot from born in Winnipeg, but living in Toronto. So we appreciate you watching. And
Dave, I was going to ask, what time does the draft start tomorrow? I don't even know.
10:30. 10:30 Central.
Okay, so the Jets picking at 37, you'll be able to catch that for sure. That's 5 picks into the second round. That pick will happen by 10:45 because they go quick after round 1.
Generally speaking, you're right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. Montreal fans are excited. That's probably a good sign.
Ivan Demidov.
Oh, okay. That was the thought process. Is that that's who they take?
Yeah. I thought maybe he would go with Chicago at 2 to pair with Bedard. But Montreal taking a forward. After last year, they took David Reinbacher, right-handed defenseman at 5th overall. I believe they picked 5th or 6th last year.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. 5th and then 5th again this year, but they go with a different position. They go forward. Interesting.
And well, I mean, Montreal fans were not pleased last year, if you recall, and they flooded that kid's social media, which, to be honest, you sucks.
Because they didn't take Michkov.
Yeah, but I mean, right.
No, that's why they were mad. But
no, you're right. You're right. But I mean, I saw someone from, I don't remember what team they support, and he said, regardless of how you feel about the player, it's not the player's fault that the team selected them, and you're unhappy with it.
Yeah.
So try and dial it back, because these are 18-year-old kids that you're unleashing your hate on for absolutely no reason. So, hey, look, picking this kid, Montreal fans are that guy's very excited. He's jumping for joy in the crowd. So, I mean, I just can't believe how slow this thing is going. But we'll see if the Jets decide to get involved, if they will choose to go on, or if they'll continue to just hold on to their thing, their selection, and only making 5 picks this year. It's only the second time in the Jets' history, of course, that they didn't have a first-round pick. Remember the other year? A little trivia.
That they didn't have a first-round pick?
Yeah.
2019, or no, that was Heinola.
Yeah.
2018? Because they traded it for Stastny?
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Correct. 2018.
Boom. There we go.
First pick was David Gustafson, the Gus Bus.
Ah, there we go. Okay. Well,
Turd Ferguson knew.
Oh, yeah. There we go. See, the chat is on top of it. I'm not as sharp when it comes.
No, you were good. You
I got it.
To it. You got to it eventually.
Got it. Yep.
I will say, SK is saying, "Come on, Chevy, get us baby Iggy." Vicious is saying, "I predict Chevy does nothing," and I will say it's interesting because I don't usually do polls on Twitter, but I did a poll on Twitter earlier today to see, just to kind of gauge what Jets fans were thinking in terms of let's see where it finished. Actually, I'll check my numbers here, Connor. But I was curious because it's funny. It originally started where it was really it was heavily in favor of the Jets are going to make a trade, and the number finished at To be accurate, the tweet said, "Will the Jets make a trade today to get into the first round this evening?" The yeses finished on top, but it was only 53% to 47%. So that's
Okay. Yeah.
it's a little.
I don't know. Like it's so interesting because the longer this plays out, and honestly, the week in the NHL around the Jets doesn't give me hope that something's going to happen. Like if the Jets trade McGroarty or Ehlers, it'll be the biggest trade that has happened this week. Kind of like
Oh
by
yeah.
far. Right? Like this was hyped up to be some insane week, but nothing has happened. No trades have happened. There's been a lot of buzz, a lot of rumors. Martin Necas from the Hurricanes. Where is he going to go? Is Columbus going to trade out a pick 4? Like all these things, Rucker McGroarty, Nikolai Ehlers, none of it's happened. So it's the longer that nothing happens, the more I feel like nothing is going to happen. I know that's not really a hard hitting analysis, but
No, that's
just,
good. That's exactly the kind of analysis we have on Illegal Curve.
There you go. But it just feels like, I don't know. I just can't picture the Jets trading into the first round with Rucker McGroarty. I could be totally wrong. I might get proven wrong in the next hour or 3, depending on how long this draft keeps going. But nothing's really happened this week. It's been quiet.
And the one thing I will say, and the most important qualifier, I think, is we don't know the circumstances. We still don't. So is this fracture repairable? Is there something that can be done to change the narrative? I mean, I would say the good thing from thinking about this from a logical perspective is that neither side has really pilloried the other. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard little things. Oh, usage, this, that, and the other. Again, I've heard some things that kind of run contrary to that. So I'm not sure I believe the kind of the narrative that's out there. But the only thing I would say is, and again, I don't have an answer to this. It's more just a rhetorical question, or you can answer it if you want. But it's rhetorical for me is just in the sense that, like, is there a possibility that you can repair this? I mean, in theory, he's going back to Michigan for the season, so he's not going to play in the NHL. As far as we know, unless he decides to sign once the season is over.
That's the thing that's been confusing to me too. Like he committed to Michigan. I know players decommit all the time, but theoretically he'd go back to be like the captain and play out his last year at Michigan and make one final run. Like it seemed like a big deal when he committed, but now everything we've read is that he wants to, like, there's a disconnect between the future. Is it that he wants to be in the NHL right now, or he wants to be in the NHL after he's done at Michigan for another year? Like when is this happening? Is he going to decommit from Michigan if he gets traded to the Minnesota Wild tonight and play on their third line next season? Like, I don't know. We haven't got clarity as to how immediate this disconnect is on because I'm sure they've had discussions like, okay, you're going back to Michigan. Or is it, we're going to play you in the AHL this year. And then he goes, okay, well, I don't want to play in the AHL, so I'll go back to Michigan. But if he was in the NHL, then they would have brought him in, or he wouldn't have committed to Michigan. Like there's just so many question marks. But on the relationship side of things, I don't know. It's hard to say that any relationship between player and team is like insurmountable to overcome the negatives that we've read. But from what we've read, it seems that way. If he gets through tonight and he's still a Jet, I feel a lot better about him, showing up at dev camp and being like, well, I love it here and whatever. Like, I don't know. There's just a much higher chance of that happening if he's still a Jet through tonight. And this all could have been a leverage play from McGroarty's camp. Maybe. No, you don't think so? Maybe. Well, like, I'm just throwing things out there.
The problem is you're setting yourself up. Like the reason why I tend to, at this point, to think it's not repairable, unless you just have the absence, unless he doesn't come to development camp, does this thing at Michigan, and then, time heals all wounds. And then, I mean, let's be realistic. There's fractious things that happen all the time, right? There's things that are always, said, whether it was like when Laine was in Finland and he hadn't signed and people were talking about. So there's always like, but Laine comes and scores 44 goals and people quickly forget that he was disgruntled for a certain point and potentially thinking about going somewhere else, right? By the way, the Utah hockey team making their first ever selection. Oh, they took Iginla. Okay, I didn't see that they took Iginla. There you go. So
Utah. Wow.
Calgary Flames will not get a chance to make that selection.
Well,
Sammy
the
K
Flames
plays.
9, I believe.
Big shout out, to Sammy K plays. But no, I think there is just that. By the way, for folks who don't know, Sammy K plays, he's my nephew, but he's also my Fortnite partner. So big shout out to Sam BK Plays. He's unbelievable. I just kind of I'm the sacrificial lamb. I go and I
Your
draw
moral
fire.
support.
No, I draw
Yeah,
fire, and then he kills everybody. So it's we have quite the relationship. But
There you go.
anyways, so no, I mean I just think that I don't know that the situation is beyond repair, but I just think that, and again, like I said, I think time would kind of erase that for potentially, because again, like things will move on. He signs whatever, and he wants to become a player. And the thing I wonder though, and again, like I said, I don't know. I'm not going to, like with Kyle Connor, I could have told you anything about Kyle Connor's college season because I watched every game. So when Kyle Connor was, there, and they were talking about him and the Hobie Baker, I could tell you right now, I'd be like, okay, I watched every one of this kid's games. I haven't watched Rutgers games. So I don't know if his skating has improved, because remember the big knock on him. And I was listening to Chris M. Peters, who's one of the biggest prospect guys out there. And he was talking about the potential return for Rutger and what the Jets could get back.
Yeah.
And his thought process was his skating is still not to that level, which is why, I'll be honest with you, I was thinking, if your skating isn't, like, again, I understand that he's got certain intangibles, but if your skating isn't great at the NHL level, you're going to get exposed. And so to me, that's and again, I'm not speaking from any sort of level of knowledge because I haven't watched any Michigan games. I couldn't tell you if his skating, I think he was taking lessons with like Barb Underhill to get faster and more efficient. But again, like I said, maybe I would imagine it's probably improved from what it was, but I don't know if it's at the level where you could say, sure, I'm going up against college guys. I'm not sure it's NHL level yet. And that's all I would say. That's my only kind of qualifier. That's why this talk about, that's why I don't see his angle as I need an NHL spot. I don't want to be in the AHL, because honestly, like,
And
how
what's
many guys
the disconnect, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense to me, because like, he's not a top 5 pick. Like, he really isn't. Like, and again, like I said, like he missed a bunch of games last year with the spleen injury. Again, like I said, like, he's not in a position, I don't think, to be telling a team I'm too good for the AHL. And I don't, and to be clear, I don't think that's what he's saying. I know that that's a narrative out there. I don't subscribe to that narrative, but I'm just saying that, you have to be a pretty special player. Like Patrick Laine didn't play any games in the AHL, right? Nikolai Ehlers, look at his skating, didn't need to play any games in the AHL. Maybe he could have, maybe it would have helped him in certain other areas of his game. But I'm just saying that most guys need time, need seasoning. Again, Kyle Connor, you want to talk about Michigan, right? Now, Kyle Connor only had the one season in college, but he tore it up. Then he went to the Jets. Didn't do anything for 20 games. Went to the AHL, didn't do anything, and then lit it up for his, I think, the last 22 games, if I recall correctly. And even he started the next season in the AHL. I'm just saying, so so that's why I'm saying I just think that there's too big a disconnect from the character that we saw from this kid to a kid who's become a diva all of a sudden. So I don't buy the narrative that's out there. And again, I don't know enough to say what is the truth yet. But I will say that I don't subscribe to that. That's all I'm going to say.
It is. I do find it interesting because I am of the mindset that I do subscribe to the narrative that's out there. Not that like it's true. The fact that I just believe that that's where the disconnect is that Rutger believes he's best suited in the NHL, whether it be right now or next year or wherever. And the Jets believe that if he came over this year, he'd be in the AHL. If he came over next year, they wouldn't guarantee that he'd be right in an NHL spot right away, which fair. Like what if the skating is a real issue, right? But I do think that that's where the disconnect is. And yeah, it is quite the contrast from the character, the kid who in the Elite Prospects video said the Winnipeg Jets are my favorite team, and they always have been. And is at development camp chopping it up with every single fan on the runway when he goes from rink to rink, and is like the future captain of the Winnipeg Jets, or has been described as that because he's been a captain at every level of hockey to now this. It doesn't add up. Like you wouldn't expect this from Rutger McGroarty, given all that you've heard about who he is off the ice. Which, yeah. And apparently he was very appreciative of how the Jets handled his injury. That was very serious. The Jets gave him space and gave him his time. And he was very appreciative of that. Mike McIntyre was on WST the other day saying the majority of this he thinks has come post Frozen 4. So since McGroarty's season ended at Michigan, which would further the thought process that the disconnect is between playing time and where McGroarty's going to be when he comes over. And then does that disagreement right now over the past couple weeks make this a relationship that is damaged beyond repair? I don't know. But this has just been a whirlwind because you don't really expect any of this from Rutger McGroarty, given what we've heard off the ice. And yet here we are.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the case. We are here. And like I said, we'll continue to discuss it until we either hear the words, we have a trade to announce, or, he remains a member of the Winnipeg Jets. But again, like I said, I'm still on the train that just something doesn't smell right to me. And we'll eventually, I'm sure the truth will come out. The Senators have made their pick. Connor, who did they select?
They took Carter Yamachuk, the first WHL defenseman with 71 points, or he led the WHL with 71 points as a defenseman in 2023-24, had 30 goals, which was the first since 2001. So
and I know that
very offensively gifted defenseman.
I'm not sure if Murad put I can't remember if the problem is all these articles start to blend together when you're talking about these draft picks and stuff like that and rumors. And so I'm not sure. I know one of the guys, I think it was Murad, had written about him and talked about him as a potential if the Jets could get into the top 10. So we'll see if the Jets are able to do that. Right now they haven't. We're going to be joined probably about 10-15 minutes maybe by Huss or Remus, one of the two. They're going to give us a little taste of the life in Vegas, the flavor of what's going on the draft floor, and maybe give us a sense of what's going on with the Jets. Connor, it's already been an hour. We've already done an hour. How many picks are we at right now? 6 or 7? 7 picks in.
The 8th pick is up on the clock. So
we'll see.
We're getting into Rutger McGroarty range. That's all I'm going to say.
Really? So that's where you think?
Well, no. I'm not predicting a trade.
No. You're saying though, if in theory though, that's where you would expect.
I think. Well, I don't know if you subscribe to this thought process, but he was the 14th pick. He's done nothing but improve. And last year was his best season of his hockey career with Michigan. And as the 14th pick, closer to the NHL, on the right development path, I would think that a first round pick value of this draft or wherever should be at least 14, if not a little bit higher, maybe a little bit less with some added on to the package. But I think if the Jets aren't getting at least the 14th pick back, then what are we doing? Like if they just did Rutger McGroarty for the 18th pick, what's the point really? Kevin Cheveldayoff wouldn't do that. He would just stay patient, in my opinion. Maybe he does. Again, maybe I'll look dumb in an hour or 3 here, but I think we're getting into Rutger McGroarty range where anywhere from maybe 10 at New Jersey, which has been rumored, to maybe 15. There's a lot of teams in there that could use a young physical winger like Rutger McGroarty and have the first round pick and the assets to do so.
Well, and the other thing also worth noting is, he's a top 6, in theory, a top 6 guy eventually. Maybe not necessarily right now, but eventually. And that's, again, that idea of if you send him to a team like Columbus, he's going to get that opportunity. It's like Anaheim. Right. He's going to get that opportunity like Chicago. Right. Again, I don't believe that Kevin Cheveldayoff is sending him to Chicago, but my point is that you could send him to one of those teams where he'll get that opportunity where he can try and, grow and develop and become, the team can afford, because they're not in win now mode, to, I mean, how many times have we heard, and again, I want to qualify this statement, but how many times have we heard the NHL is in the development league? Now, folks could push back on me and say, well, Dave, I mean, look at the Dallas Stars. They've got Logan Stankoven, Wyatt Johnston, Maverick Bourque. But I would say, and I think it's worth noting, that Logan Stankoven was dominating the AHL, similar to what Jack Roslovic was doing when back in the day. And Logan Stankoven was only recalled, if I recall correctly, double entendre there, but if I recall correctly, the reason why was because Duchesne was injured. So it wasn't like they were like, well, this guy's unbelievable. He's tearing up the AHL. We got to call him up. It's that they had an injury and they needed to replace, a guy. So I'm just saying that it's, it's always important to understand, and why Johnston's, he was, I think the 2021 draft. I think he's the same year as Chaz Lucius. So, I mean, he's older.
Well, I want to ask, this is a decent transition though, because Brad Lambert tore up the AHL last year. AHL all-rookie first team. And you were going to ask me about Sean Monahan a while back.
Yes.
And whether or not you think the Jets will re-sign him.
Yeah.
The Brad Lambert, Sean Monahan thing, where are you at with that? And it's all on the topic of youth, whether it's Rutger, Brad Lambert, Ville Heinola. This is all under the same umbrella. But if you sign Sean Monahan to a 3 or 4 year deal,
are you blocking?
Is Brad Lambert are you blocking? Is Brad Lambert a winger next season and beyond? Where are you at on that? I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, that's good. So I'll just finish my thought on the Dallas one.
Yeah,
and like I said, Maverick Bourque, I think he played one game, and then he stayed with Texas, and he was again the guy who was lighting up the AHL. So I'm just saying that there's, of course, youth is important, and if you can, especially guys who are ready, if you can get them on their ELCs and having an impact from a team, even a win now team. Obviously it's significant because it allows you to bolster your lineup with guys that, are going to also help you win now. Like, if the Jets were to acquire a top pairing right side defenseman, right? So that's sort of, it's kind of that yin yang that teams have to face. Now, in terms of Brad Lambert, and I watched every single game he played last year. I don't think I missed any. The Jets have to make a decision because similar, and I hate to say this because I sound like a broken record, but similar to what they did with Jack Roslovic. Jack Roslovic was one of the best. I mean, I hate to say this because I don't watch the Eastern Division teams in the AHL, and I don't really even watch the Pacific teams. We primarily in the AHL, you watch the Central Division teams and you watch the Canadian teams. Those are the only ones that we see because we're watching the Moose, of course. So I really don't have tremendous insight into every single player that's in the AHL. That's why I always find it awkward when we have to do like league-wide awards. And it's like, well, we're doing an award. We're talking about this. I haven't even watched this guy play. How am I supposed to give you any, I can give you any guy in the Moose lineup from like guy who's played every game to a guy who's played one game. I'll give you insight, but I can't tell you about the guy who's playing for, the Hartford Wolfpack unless he played for the Moose. Like it's there's not a lot of opportunity to kind of have insight into those players. But I will say, it's funny. I'm gonna completely counter what I just said. But to my mind, for the guy here, I'll qualify it this way: for the guys that I watched in the AHL, Jack Roslovic was the best player. Okay. As the center. Now, the Jets, and I remember thinking at the time, this is weird. They moved him to the wing for like the last 10 games, and their line was unbelievable, but he was playing on the wing all of a sudden. And then there was an injury. And of course, Jack Roslovic gets recalled and he's now on the wing, and he stayed as a winger. And every once in a while he'd flip to the center, but for the most part, he was a winger.
Yeah.
Now Brad Lambert, who I've talked to numerous times, prefers to play center. He likes being a center. The Seattle Thunderbirds, of course, when he was sent to junior, they sent him there and he became a center, which is what he had played when he was overseas. The Moose, of course, that first, I think the 14 games he played before he went to Seattle, he was playing he was as a winger. So went to played center in Seattle, was really good. Of course, they went to they won the WHL championship, went to the Memorial Cup, fell short. But the point is that was him as a center. And then, of course, this year, the Moose decided to keep him as a center. And whether it was Craig Heisinger on our Moose end of season show or Mark Morrison, either in the end of season media availability or, on that show as well, the end of season one we did for Illegal Curve, they talked about, how Lambert developed as a center and the defensive. You talk about the points, and the points were good. And I detailed that, all throughout the year, how he was kind of rising up the all-time lists. But I will say that the one thing I find interesting is that, they both Zinger and Mark Morrison, the head coach of the Moose, talked about how good the defensive acumen that he picked up over the years, and the responsibility that he kind of developed. Now, again, that would hold him in good stead if he was playing as a winger than as a center, of course. But I don't know if he's ready to play center in the NHL just yet. From the conversations I've had with other folks who watched him play, they're like, probably needs another year of seasoning in the AHL with some NHL time if the opportunity presents itself. If you want him to be a center, if you want him to be a winger with less responsibility, he could probably do it. His speed is unbelievable. His hands are unbelievable. So I mean, there's definitely elements of his game. So I mean, I don't think it's a bad decision. Sorry, we should pause for my soliloquy here. The 8th pick was made by Seattle. Who'd they take?
It was Catton,
Oh, okay.
5'10" center. Yeah, super
Yeah.
skilled center. Another center, I guess 5'10", maybe he'll play the wing as we're on this conversation, but
Yeah.
they've already got Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, 2 young up and coming centers. So an interesting pick there. And now Calgary is on the clock at pick 9.
Well, they can't
without
get
Iginla.
Without
I
Iginla.
know, without
But-
Iginla. So what
but
are
I
they
was-
going to do? They probably just threw out their entire draft board. Anyways, go ahead.
And you know, Shane Wright though, who remember Shane Wright was scorned. He was mad. He didn't get selected. He kind of fell. Seattle took him. What did they take him in the end? 5th overall or fourth or 5th?
4th.
Yeah. So they took him 4th overall. And where has he been the last 2 seasons? Been in Coachella Valley.
Right.
And where's he gone the last 2 seasons? Been to the Calder Cup final. Now he lost both years to Winnipeg or Dylan McElrath and the Hershey Bears. But think about how good that's been for this kid's development. Now, Jacob Stoller, who we know, he's been detailing about how much growth you've seen in this kid. So I'm just saying from that perspective, Shane Wright, when he makes that jump to the NHL, I don't think like Pascal Vincent always used to say to me, when these guys go, we don't want to see him again. We want to give them the tools that they're not, there's no, well, you got 4 or 5 games. Now you're coming back. So similarly, I would expect with a guy like Brad Lambert, and Brad Lambert's like a competitive guy. You know, I talked to him. I think that one of the things I asked him at the end of the season, media availability, I go, you know, guys have goals, you know, like not literally goals, but like guys have set goals at the beginning of the year. You don't have to, and I said, you don't have to tell me what those are, but were you able to achieve them? And like totally stone faced, he said, yeah, my goal was to win and we didn't achieve it. I was like, oh, sunny days, Brad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, again, like he's got that competitive edge. He's got that fire. I think he's going to be a very good player. I think he's a guy who's, I think, very loyal to this organization because they saw an opportunity. They drafted him. They put him into a good position for success. I think he likes that group. You know, that was a young group last year. And that's one of the things you know, again, I don't want to get on a soapbox, Connor, especially we'll wait for, you know, Calgary's about to make their pick. But one of the things that people talk about, like the Jets draft, develop, and destroy. I think I saw the headlines and stuff about development. But the Jets organization made the decision last year to start up the middle in the Moose, of course, with Chaz Lucius, their 2021 first rounder, Brad Lambert, their 2022 first rounder, and Danny Zhilkin, their 2022 third rounder.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 guys who are all under 20 or turning 21 that, you know, during the season, who are up the middle for your organization. Now you're not going to win that way. And the Moose didn't. Now it didn't help that their goaltending stunk, but the point is that they did that because what did they do? They're trying to put those guys in a position to have success
and
to grow.
Funny enough, you look at the Jets and it brought up Sean Monahan and whether or not they re-sign him. Say they don't, and Nikolai Ehlers is a Jet to start the season.
Yeah.
There's actually a better path for these players to play center than there is wing. You've got Connor, Velarde, Ehlers, Perfetti, who are all going to be top 6 wingers. And when you look at the center position, you've got Mark Scheifele and you've got there we go.
I was trying to bring our boy M. Remus in here, and then all of a sudden I was pulling my phone down. But anyways, keep finishing your thought.
I was going to say yes. There's Remus. Yeah. Anyways, Sean Monahan, whether or not they bring him back, big factor in Brad Lambert being the second line center or not. Remus at the Sphere. Let's go.
M. Remus at the Sphere. Remo, how's it going?
Man, it's crazy here. This is one of the cooler things that I've ever seen. Like, you never thought a draft could be exciting, but I just want to see what graphics they're going to be showing on the board. It's out of control. Very cool for coming here to check out the draft, seeing the NHL's next stars, but also, I mean, I've heard a lot about the Sphere. I was very into the U2 experience, watching videos, but this is super cool. All the graphics, all the logos. So very, great experience so far here at the draft. I was there in Nashville, it's kind of just same old here. Like, you can sit back and kind of enjoy the ride wherever they got cooked up, showing on that big screen.
So where are you exactly? Are you in the place, in the kind of the back room where they do the interviews with the guys who get drafted?
Yeah. So I was looking for a quiet spot. I'm on the 5th floor of the Sphere.
Okay.
And this is a media workroom. There's other media on the event level. And
Yeah.
so they bring everyone up here. So behind me right now, the Ducks 3rd overall pick was here, and Blue Jackets pick. I think a lot of people waiting for Tisha Ginla, who just got picked by Utah.
Yep.
I know Ryan Smith was behind me earlier doing a big press conference here. So I'm up here in the media workroom where everyone's gathered around. A lot of cameras, if you can see here. I'll show you guys. There's a lot going on over here. Yeah, there you go. So these are all the pods. They have like, how many interview pods? They have eight pods, and so they bring the pickos, and then they bring them up here. They do an interview, in the pod, and then Rennie gets to do one-on-one after with them for Sportsnet. So it's very, very busy.
And so what's the, from a Winnipeg perspective, I know it seems like there's a lot of Winnipeg fans, but what's, you were in the media availability before the draft got underway. So maybe what are your kind of assessment as to what Kevin Cheveldayoff had to say? You're always having conversations, Michael, but, in those conversations, you're looking to have more conversations.
Yeah, my assessment is they shouldn't have traded. If I knew what this draft was going to look like, I would have never traded away that 1st-round pick for Sean Monahan. Now we don't get to see the Jets graphics take up the entire screen. They made it look like I was in Chicago for the Chicago. I tweeted out from Winnipeg Sports Talk. But, I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff, as far as, what he said before, he asked about Rutgers. Rutgers, a member of the Winnipeg Jets organization. I mean, he's not really going to give you anything. Nick Ehlers, he's here. He's a big part of the team as well. There were so many reports like, Rutger getting traded likely before the draft. Elliott saying that, Murat saying that, and no deal. I guess maybe we could see something later, but if we thought there was going to be Jets activity, certainly very quiet right now.
And, New Jersey's up right now, pick 10. I said earlier with Dave, right when we got to pick 8 or 9, I was saying we're getting into Rutger range if they were going to make a trade. You talked about the reports earlier in the week, but I know you've been talking with like a ton of media people probably at the draft there. Have you heard anything? Are people saying anything? Is there extra chatter, less chatter around McGroarty? What's going on the draft floor? Nothing.
I haven't heard too much, but you're right. I mean, what was he picked 14th? So maybe if you wanted to get a little better value, there could we haven't seen Gary Bettman come out and say we have a trade to announce. We haven't heard it yet today. Will we be hearing that? Was there a cool vet line on that tonight? So we did have some trades earlier in the last 24 hours, the Mangiapane deal, and there's a trade with some picks today with LA and Montreal. But no, I don't know. It's very, very quiet here, but maybe some, it's lingering in the back. I did notice on Frank Cervelli's, trade board that seems to be updated by the day. Rutger was like 4, and now he's 10. I don't know if that means because other people are more likely, but I did notice that.
Yeah, and it is interesting because it's funny because Frank was asked about it a couple of days ago. It kind of seemed like he didn't know what was going on because he answered, and I was kind of like, Then he came out and he gave a little more authoritative answer a couple of days later, but. Yeah, like I think it's a good point by you. Like, is it mean that he's less desirable, or is it just that there's more guys that are more likely to be dealt? And Kevin Cheveldayoff's answer was his usual non-answer, so that's not a terrible surprise. But I guess I mean, what other buzz are you picking up in Vegas? Like, is it? Is it from whether it's from a Jets perspective or just from a, something that you're noticing because you have been to drafts in the past and in terms of this one being slightly different?
I think just everyone's just saying how cool this is. Like if this is going to be the last in-person draft, what a place to have it in Vegas. I guess I noticed Gary Bettman calling it Sphere Las Vegas. Yeah. He didn't call it the Sphere. It's like Eagles who are playing. They're not the Eagles. It's just Eagles. I think that's here in November. But yeah, I think just how, this was gonna be the last time that, you have an in-person draft and just what a great location. You had some stars coming out for the awards and, we're here at Sphere Las Vegas, just an incredible venue. So, I think everyone just thinks this is super, super cool. And I got to say, what the highlight for me, when Celine Dion was brought out to do the Montreal pick, I think there was a huge pop in the building. She does shows here. There were also a lot of Montreal fans cheering the Demidov pick, very excited. Maybe I think they had some FOMO. They didn't get Mishkov last year, and now he's coming to the NHL, and maybe Demidov can be their guy. There were speculation he was going to go to number 2 to Chicago, but again, just how you have everyone together and you walk around the hotel. We're at the media hotel, and you're seeing executives and front office people, and who Austin Matthews was doing a media scrum today because of the Four Nations thing. Connor Bedard's here making the pick, so I think Vegas brings out a lot of stars, and it's like, yeah, who wouldn't want to come to Vegas for the NHL draft? So I mean, this is a great location, and again, we got a press release saying, oh, we're going to use the full technology of the Sphere, and even between picks, they're showing stuff up there. Super. I tweeted out some pictures. I put it on the Winnipeg Sports Talk Instagram story, but until it looks cool in pictures, but you got to see it in person, I think.
And you and Huss were mentioning on WST today that and yesterday, the weather, they have good AC there in the Sphere. It looks like I don't see a lot of people walking by going like this. Yeah, they got good AC. Okay, good.
Man,
good
so we're outside and lining up to go in. And it was like 40. I didn't think it was like too bad. Like I was walking on in a suit and a jacket at 40. Oh, look, here's Rennie.
Hey, Sean Reynolds. Look at this guy
doing the interviews.
Sean Reynolds doing the old jump in.
That's awesome. He can't hear it. I got headphones in.
Yeah,
but like outside walking like 40. It didn't feel that bad, but when you're right at the door, you feel the AC coming at you. So you're never. It's like when you go into the Metrodome, the old Metrodome, you'd feel like it's suck in, but it was blowing out AC. Yeah. So, no one's outside here ever at 40. Yeah. Everyone's inside. There's tunnels connecting. So I haven't really noticed the heat too bad. Although it seems like you look at the thing, you're like, holy geez, 40 plus. What's going on here?
Well, what was the award ceremony like? I know that they shortened it. They didn't make it quite as long.
Yeah.
The hockey play. I was listening to you guys on Winnipeg Sports Talk earlier this afternoon saying how most of the hockey players didn't know the comedian, which is too bad because he's actually hilarious. He does such good impressions, but seems like they didn't know who he was. But from your perspective, just, again, we make fun of the award ceremony, but what did you see? Again, it's different when you're watching on television than when you're actually live and in person.
They try to make it a nice theater event. It's an hour really condensed. So I thought that was good because it's dragged on. They had entertainment. They had bands. They're trying. They had the comedian. I thought he went kind of hard roasting on them. And Hustler, now, I was familiar with him from the Howard Stern show.
Yeah.
And I thought me and Hustler were laughing, but maybe not a lot of other people were. But I think he was trying. I think it's a tough job there. So. You know what? It's hockey history. You're seeing, the Hart Trophy handed out, Ted Lindsay Award, Vezina, Norris. So pretty cool. Do the major awards. If Hellbuck wasn't nominated or wasn't going to win, would we have shown up? I'm not so sure. It would have been nice to have a night off, but it was meant 2 Vezinas. That is really, really impressive. And I think he's going to go down. Definitely one of the top American goalies ever. Him and Timmy Thomas, the only guys with 2 Vezinas board in the U.S. So I thought it was fine. It was what I don't know. We enjoyed Jay Farrow coming out in the goalie.
Yeah, that was fun.
Michael Bublé, Will Arnett. They try to give it some star power. They're trying. It was fine. I mean, it was an hour. It was an hour. Look, what am I gonna say? It was. I didn't think it was that bad.
Well, hey, we're in. Connor's up next, but we're an hour and 20 minutes into the draft, and they've made the 11th pick was just made. This thing's moving along at a snail's pace. Reem, you might be there. You might be there all night long.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, look, I'll just stare at the ceiling here. That's what you're supposed to do at the Sphere, right? Just sit there and look at what the heck's going on. They got videos, they got graphics. It is what do they call it? An auditory experience. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. It's visual, audio, sounds good. I mean, I never, usually the draft in a regular arena, who cares about the graphics that they're showing on screen? I would not.
Exactly.
2 seconds to think about it, but this is awesome. You're walking whoa, this is super cool. So well done here.
Yeah, and back to the awards show. I subscribe to Huss's thinking from today when he said that they need to have a mandatory 1 hour cocktail hour for the players to kind of loosen them up a little
Yes.
bit before the awards show. Everyone's just so uptight and stressed, and it's just like, it's the awards. It's supposed to be fun. But anyways, I wanted to ask about Hellebuck's presser because you were there, you took some photos, you filmed the presser itself. What were your takeaways from what he said and about Rick Bowness and his season overall as a Jet?
Yeah, I think Hellebuck's a guy who strives to be the best, and he's certainly reached that pinnacle of being the best goalie in the NHL for the regular season. As far as the comments about Rick Bowness, I think it just reinforces what we already knew, that he came in and he changed. He came in to do a couple things. He talks about all the time, change the culture, improve defensive structure, get them playing a consistent style of hockey, and I think he did that. And Connor Hellebuck, very, very complimentary to Rick Bowness, said I forget what the line was, but tremendous influence in my career. And I think if you're looking ahead saying, oh, how's Scott Arniel going to do after? He's like, well, I think Arnie and him kind of had the same alignment was his term. So I think when you're hiring a coach, I feel like it's not far off of what they've been doing. And I think it's so easy to be like, oh, the Jets had this horrible first round exit, which they did. But I think you're using a 5-game sample size to erase an 82-game sample size, which, they were a very good hockey team. They were contending for the top spot in the West. So I think you have to find a balance saying, the Jets, which Jets were they? The Jets for 5 games that forgot, how they got into the playoffs? What are the Jets that play consistently? That every time you thought, hey, is this team for real? They showed you that they were. It's hard to take away those playoff games where they just did not look like the team that we saw through the regular season. So it's going to be interesting how management approaches the free agency coming up, and I guess the draft, if there's going to be any moves made.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but we'll just let folks know the 11th pick by the Sharks was made. They had that pick from Buffalo. They acquired that one. Sam Dickinson from London, of course, teammates with Jacob Julian, the Jets 5th rounder, who really took the OHL, well, not necessarily the OHL by storm, but Jets fans definitely were paying attention to what Jacob Julian did. Of course, went to the Memorial Cup this year as well with the London Knights, powerhouse team. Reem, from your perspective, you talk about the Jets and making trades. You look like you're being swarmed right now by a bunch of Sharks, but
there's the Montreal pick. Demidov just walked by me, and there's so many media setting up. This is I didn't really know where I was going to do it in a stairwell to be quiet. I was like,
no, it's good background.
I'm nervous about talking here in public. I got people sitting around and. Don't want to be that.
Someone's gonna approach you and be like, "You're out to lunch with that take, man. I was walking by and heard you. You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, that's what Sean Reynolds did. He just doesn't have a mic, so we couldn't actually hear what he was saying. But he was like, "Reem, I heard your take. Terrible take." But just speaking of takes, what is your kind of takeaway, your thought right now on the McGroarty situation, and do you see that Again, I'm obviously you don't know one way or the other, but in your mind, do you see him being dealt this weekend, or do you think, especially if he doesn't get dealt the next 2-3 picks, like Connor has been saying, the likelihood of the Jets being a trade seems a lot less after 15, I would think.
Yeah, I don't think others running behind me now. I don't think that they have to move him, but I think I see the two sides here from McGroarty. I mean, you see your teammates going to the NHL. I think Kenny and Randy were saying, he probably spoke with other Michigan guys like Trouba and Kopp. Trouba, who had to hold out because of the contract. Kopp was all miffed about having to go to arbitration. And he's probably saying early on, hey, they're not giving me an NHL spot. What kind of trouble are they going to give me down the line? When I'm having contract negotiations. And he's probably like, this isn't the best for me. All my boys are going to the NHL. I can just, stay in college, make some NIL money, and threaten to go to free agency and sign with whatever team that he wants. That's going to be the best fit for him. So he has that leverage over the Jets, but the Jets have time and they could always open a roster spot. So we'll have to see what happens there. And I don't know. I believe the reports, when Elliott or, Marat doesn't put out a lot of stuff, he says likely going to be traded. I believed it, but maybe we haven't seen a deal yet, but they said before the draft. That was Elliott earlier this week on 32 Thoughts. I think we're past before the draft
We are.
now. So maybe there's
Walk
not
up,
going to be
Remo,
a
you
deal.
need to walk up to him on the draft floor and be like, listen, all of Winnipeg was expecting a deal before the draft. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You lied to us.
Shovel day. I should have said that. I was like, well, we had 700 people on Winnipeg Sports Talk Day waiting for a deal. You let us down. Where was it? So if they're going to make one, I think this would be the time. But maybe someone else does something later. We'll wait and see. But again, we haven't had Gary Bettman interrupting with a trade during the draft here, so maybe it's coming.
Yeah, Philly's up with pick 12 right now. I haven't seen if they've made the pick or not, but the TV is just showing some insane graphics as well. It must be insane in person. But anyways, back to the McGroarty Ehlers thing. We mentioned this off the top. The McGroarty quote from Kevin Cheveldayoff was probably 10 seconds front to back. Didn't have anything to say. Rutger's a part of the organization right now. Then Nikolai Ehlers, he was a little bit more complimentary, compared it to the Hellebuck and Scheifele situation from a year ago. You were there, Remus. Did you kind of get that sense that, okay, McGroarty, that was a quick answer. He doesn't want to talk about that. But Ehlers, he is a little bit more hope that maybe he'll be able to re-sign him, given what we've learned over the past week or so.
Yeah, sorry. I think I heard that all. But look, we heard Scott Arniel talk about Nikolai Ehlers saying, I want him, I need him. I believe that was the line. And you look at this Jets lineup, like who's playing second line? They do kind of need him for secondary scoring, unless, the player that they get back, an NHL player, is going to be that type of person. So it seems like they're going to hang on to him, but I don't know. You got to make a decision. Like, are you going to trade him, or are you going to try to re-sign him? So, the way that it went last year with Scheifele and Hellebuck, maybe they do find a thing. But if you're Nikolai Ehlers, maybe you do want to go somewhere else, or it's a tough call. It seems like for now, status quo here.
Although
with the Jets going into next year.
Although right now Daniel Briere is having a extended conversation, so there may be a little bit of a trade going on.
It's being reported. Darren Dreger saying trade coming. Elliot Freeman saying some movement coming with the 12th pick. So this pick might be moved.
The Rutger pick.
The Rutger, maybe? I don't know. The Jets no, we'll see. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Z Bomb, maybe a little Z Bomb out of University of Denver. Maybe there's a.
Yeah, well, we were saying he was going to go number 3 to Anaheim, and they really shocked everyone with that pick.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a good skater, and he's a teammate of Garrett Brown. The Jets, was he a 4th rounder in 2022? So, or 2023, I can't remember. These drafts are.
Is he going to say it right now? I can't
hear.
I'm watching it on TV as well.
Hey, this is a live show. Everybody's doing this live, so we'll find out soon. The insiders will. It is interesting though, right? I mean, this is what happens when your player is available. You see someone and it looks like we haven't heard anything other than I got Huss saying.
Okay, so he's got a trade alert. It says on the board.
Yeah.
Minnesota is moving up one spot.
Really?
Minnesota's moving up to 12.
Wow.
Are they taking Z Bomb here?
How do you pronounce it, Remo?
It's Booyam.
Booyam.
Yeah, Booyam.
Who told you to put the bomb on?
Yeah, who told you? So he's got a lot of family and friends here. I saw. So maybe he's the one. He's the one jumping up. So yeah, the Flyers trade 12 picks are wild. They do have TVs on in this media room. What's going on behind me here? Oh, TJ Ginla's. TJ Ginla's got a Utah. That draft hat's up there with Mark Scheifele's jersey from 2011.
2011. Speaking of that draft, you and Ezzy were at that draft for IC.
This is my 3rd draft. I was at 2011. I was last year in Nashville, and now here in Vegas. So
we had a good run. We had a good run from 2011 on IC till 2017, with the exception of 2012. We skipped the Jacob Trouba one, and then we've been after Dallas in 2018. We just stopped going.
Yeah,
we're getting
really
run over everybody. You got a lot of close talkers.
I'm in the worst spot, and like this media workroom is like a free for all. Just like get what you can, and this spot was available. I took it.
What are the snacks like? Let's give the folks, because there's usually just for people who don't know. Usually the draft has like big tables. They have food, chips. Usually have drinks. I usually grab a couple cherry Pepsis. So usually there's quite a few options for the media.
Yeah, I took a water. I got water. I had a Pepsi before. There's Diet Pepsi, Pepsi Zero. The media meal was like sliders, beef and pulled pork sliders with some homemade like chips.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I haven't seen any dessert. I did have coffee. So they're feeding us pretty good. The buffet at the awards yesterday. Maybe this is why I love the awards, because they had an amazing buffet there.
Really?
Yesterday, and I hadn't eaten all day. They had some like chicken fingers and burnt ends, coleslaw, bunch of salads. There were several desserts. This is why me and Hustler loved the awards, because there was like s'more cake, cookies.
People don't come to Illegal Curve for hockey analysis. Don't come here for insight into the Jets. We're just talking about what kind of food is happening at the draft. That's really all we're concerned about.
Exactly.
I'll tell you guys. I haven't. Yeah, I mean, it's in Vegas. Everything's it's the land of buffets and good food, so everything is pretty good.
I was going to say that's true. The pick is in for the Minnesota Wild. Bill Guerin up at the podium. He's about to make his selection. It's based on Jet.
Be Buiam, or however you say his name, right?
Yeah, good for him.
Is that who they picked?
Yeah, that's awesome. Watch out for him. We're going to be seeing him go up against the Jets.
Yeah.
What is he? Very quick skating, offensive defenseman. Oh man, did they show it on the X? I should go outside and take videos of the outside, because I haven't done that yet.
Well, whenever you need to jump off, we appreciate you jumping on with us, giving us some flavor from inside the sphere. But if you got to go, you got to go.
They showed the picture of. I was like, oh, I've only been taking pictures inside, but there's a whole exosphere.
Well, Connor and I were talking about that, and we were saying how neat it must be if you're outside to be able to, when the player makes a selection, then they show that on the screen. It looks pretty sick.
They just showed it on TV. I hadn't seen that angle, so look, I got to do some social media for Winnipeg Sports Talk. The Jets don't have a pick. Really missed out on.
You got to
think of the marketing. Yeah. Think of how many likes you could get if you had the Jets on the exosphere, or the Jets. Like, are they going to be doing this for round 2? There's no way. Round 2's too quick. Maybe they'll just have the board. They're not going to have these elaborate graphics.
No, you're probably right. You are probably right, because otherwise it would take too long. But again.
Oh my God.
What?
Here, Hustler just texted me. This is what was on the screen. This is incredible.
That's pretty awesome, actually. So is it still that traditional sort of, like, the media is limited to that one, like the teams are kind of coordinated off, and then the media go around them?
Yeah, it's like the same. So the teams are like on the floor, and then there's a little section in the back, like not on risers like it usually is. Yeah. But they have like tables in the back corner, and they have that like barrier that separates you from the teams.
Yeah, we're not good enough to be around the teams, of course. So now that the Wild have made their pick at 12th overall, the Flyers are up next at 13, and then the Sabres are up at 14 after trading their pick when they were at the 11th one. So anyways, Remo, you got to go, or you want to stick around? What's your thought process?
How's the chat? Am I boring them, or I can't?
No, the chat. Well, first of all, the chat wants to give. First of all, someone said we need food info in the Discord. Connor, make Remo add it. So people are. People are loving this talk.
I haven't posted. I went for tacos last night with your cousin AP, who's here.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. That was an experience. I'll post the tacos. There's Colin. They put up Colin Jensen's here. The sports that he's got the cookies. So I guess they're bringing up the desserts now.
Colin Jensen, no
time
surprise.
For desserts. We're not.
Colin's always waiting there.
Desserts. We're at pick 13. We're not even halfway through the night.
I think Craig Button just walked by. Hand him, get Craig Button on here. If you're gonna go, we'll trade you for Craig.
Where did he go? Yeah, he's. I saw him walking around.
He's the best.
So,
We love having Craig on the show. He's so good.
He was so nice. We had him on from the draft last year. Talked about the Barlow pick. He was always nice, always available. Big fan. Craig Button, Marty Biron. I saw him here.
Yeah.
With Buffalo again. Everyone's
That's the one
So-
negative
so-
about not going. Like, I will say, like, it's funny because, like I was saying earlier before you joined us, I said, like, we used to go to the draft and it was great, and it's great to network, and you really do. You see a lot of people that you guys talk to. Colin Jensen, everybody from Sportsnet. If you're ever looking at a picture of Sean Reynolds, it's because Colin Jensen right there is the guy who's holding up the camera and taking a picture of Rennie. But no, but you do get a chance to meet a lot of people and have conversations. And well, now I sound like Kevin Cheveldayoff. But no, but versus when you're here, the only difference is we get a lot more work done when we're here than when we're there. But it is a good experience. It is good for networking purposes and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
T. Will wants
sure.
to know:
Well,
Do you think Craig Button is saying I saw Remo here? I think he probably is.
maybe I don't know. We'll see. Although I remember I saw a Dragger and I introduced myself. I was like, I know who you are. So I guess maybe people
Wow.
do know.
Yeah, that's well, a little humble brag right there. I think that's probably the way we got to end the segment with Remo. I don't think, man, that's like that's your like, your Costanza. Got to leave on a high note. That's your high note. Gregor recognized you.
Sure. I'll leave because I think the people beside me might be getting annoyed.
A little frustrated,
but
all right, getting bullied out of there.
Okay,
right,
well, hey, but Remo, if you guys want, we'll of course be on tomorrow, the Legal Curve Hockey Show from 9 till we're not certain. But if you want to join us tomorrow, you guys are both welcome to as well.
Sure. Yeah, we'll figure out we're not really sure what our plan is, if we're going to be recording videos and just posting. But
we'll do that. Hey, for the record, for legalcurve.com, do that too, because I like those videos.
Hey, you gave us some great promotion there, so I appreciate everything that you do, Dave. I do see our YouTube external links. There's a bunch from illegalcurve.com, so much appreciated.
All right. Anytime. I appreciate what you guys do. You guys appreciate it's good. So we live in a mutual love society. It's all wonderful. Hugs and kisses. All right, Remo. Have a great time the rest of the night. Tell Huss we say hello. And there he goes. That's Michael Remus of Winnipeg Sports Talk joining us here on this special edition. Connor's a little conflicted though, because he's of course a member of Winnipeg Sports Talk, as is evidenced by.
I'm actually in Vegas. Let me just pull this green screen down. I'm actually at the Sphere.
Spency said,
I'll get a Sphere background.
Yeah, you should switch it. Spency says, wait, Illegal Curve has a website. They do have a website, a little site called illegalcurve.com. That's where you get all the latest Jets Moose news, some hockey news around Manitoba sometimes, but generally focused on the NHL and AHL clubs of Manitoba. Maybe someone else wants to write about, junior hockey. If you want to write about the Brandon Wheat Kings, send me an email, dave@illegalcurve.com. I'm always happy to have a conversation and get some folks, some new folks. In fact, one of our most recent junior hockey reporter on Illegal Curve, I can say he has won 2 championships himself in the ECHL, and his dad did just win the Stanley Cup. So shout out to Jake Maurice, of course. That was he was covering the Winnipeg Ice for us back a few years ago, and of course his dad just won the Stanley Cup, so no big deal there. But I was like, oh,
I know this is old news, but what did you think of Maurice shouting out the Jets?
Well, I wouldn't say it's old news. It destroyed my Twitter for a day, where my tweet went.
What did it happen like Monday? Like that's old news. But anyway,
no. I thought it was an interesting comment. I thought that I think it shows you the respect that Paul Maurice still and connection, I should say, that he still feels to this city of Winnipeg. And I thought it was nice. I thought it was nice that he, still, I mean, it's funny. Like, it's almost like it's weird because Paul Maurice, I will say, is probably the most polished person I've ever spoken to from a hockey perspective. He was in the media for a while, so I can say that, like, he definitely, he's very calculated in what he says and what he reveals. Philadelphia is up on the clock, so Connor will let you know who they pick when the selection is finally made. Right now, they're probably thanking all their fans back in Philly. But no, I was going to say, like, I thought the comment was, it was almost like he wasn't thinking about it. He just spoke from the heart. And to be honest with you, I loved what he said about his dad. The part about his dad was the really touching part about his dad being connected to all of his heroes. And then the comment about Winnipeg, because he said the next one. So I'm like, well, if you're retiring, you should still probably be loyal to your team. But again, like, not taking it that deep. I just thought it was a testament to his feelings towards the community. Again, similar to DeMello and what I talked about in the first hour. I think similarly, that's a sort of thing with Maurice, is that here's a guy who was so connected to the community. You could love him or hate him. You could feel betrayed by the fact that he left the organization, went to a different team. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he was connected to this community. He was a part of this community. His kids, were raised in this community. And so I think he spoke from the heart. And I just think that it resonated because, like I said, I don't think I've ever had a tweet do the numbers that it did when people were just reacting and all over our social medias, whether it was like Instagram or Facebook or whatever it was. People were going crazy. So I think people, and we can ask the chat what they thought about it and, your feelings and that sort of thing. What did you think?
Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, in the moment, it was shocking for sure. But then when you look back on it, like you said, he was so connected here. And before the Jets brought him in, he wasn't really like a hot commodity on the coaching market. Like he was like, this was another opportunity when he came to Winnipeg and he coached here for 7 or 8 seasons. Took them the farthest that the Jets have ever been, 2.0 at least, to in that
or
1.0.
Yeah,
1.0. Well, yeah, but yeah,
it was the farthest any Jets team had ever gone in the NHL.
Ever gone?
In the NHL, because technically WHA.
See, I said 2.0 just to clear.
No, because
up,
it's easy. It's an easy qualifier. Because you can't say the most a Winnipeg team in the NHL ever did, because then you got to go back to 1919, winning the Stanley Cup. So if you say a Winnipeg-based Jets team, a Jets team in the NHL, you're good. It covers 1.0, 2.0.
There you go.
Which, for the record, is going to be my launching off point after you've done the Maurice thing. I got something to ask you.
Okay. Either way, the farthest the Jets have ever been, and yes, they fell short that year against Vegas. They had an absolutely loaded team, but Maurice kind of got his footing back as an NHL head coach, was given the Florida job. Maybe Winnipeg was like a stepping stone to that. And then in the years with Florida, has been to back-to-back finals, finally closed it out in Game 7, and probably feels bad for leaving the Jets abruptly. Like, I remember that year quite well. The Jets were, I believe it was top 3 in the Central, if not first or second when he left. Yes, they had lost 2 or 3 games in a row at the time that he left, but he was like, I know it's time. They need a new voice. But he left, and then Dave Lowry stepped in, and the Jets missed the playoffs. So I'm sure he feels bad for, leaving in the heat of the battle for a team that gave him a chance, a team that he went to battle with in the playoffs, many rounds. They beat Edmonton that one year as well. I'm sure he is very grateful for what Winnipeg did for him and feels bad about how that ended, because he was the one to just kind of step away. And at the end of it, he probably thinks, you know what, if there's a team he's rooting for going forward, not named the Florida Panthers, it would probably be the Winnipeg Jets, given what he's done for his career. So it was shocking in the moment, but then when you look back at the series of events and how Paul Maurice probably feels, I didn't find it to be all that shocking, but still a very nice gesture, to say the least.
And it's funny because, and apparently I'm basing what I'm about to say on what the chat is saying, but it looks like Bruce Buffer was the guy who just announced the Flyers pick. So, the legendary Bruce Buffer, who's got that voice that I think he's also got a brother who also is an announcer. I think Michael Buffer, maybe.
No, it was Michael Buffer. It was Michael Buffer.
Did I say Bruce?
Buffer. Yeah.
Who's Bruce?
Dude, you're talking to the wrong guy.
No, but I think he's got I think there's a second brother though. I think if someone
it was Michael. It was Michael.
Right,
Buffer.
but I think there's a brother.
Okay.
That he has a brother who also does announcements. But so JC's saying Michael. So I mean, I was I said Bruce. Maybe I was thinking of Bruce Boudreau. I don't know what I was thinking, but maybe let's hope there's a Bruce Buffer at some point. In somewhere in the world.
Bruce Buffer is the UFC.
But that's his brother though.
Yes,
that's his brother.
I would assume that they.
They are. They
do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Yep.
Now we're getting it. Snaptoba is giving. Okay, the whole chat is getting it. So it's Bruce is UFC, and then Michael is the boxing. But
there you go.
I was going to say so to that end, and right now Elliot Friedman, who's a liar for the record, said it was going to happen before the draft. Way to go, Elliot! But called out. But anyways, although he did say it was Allmark and McGroarty, so he got half of it right.
Right.
But he's now busy. He's busy talking to Danny Briere, and who's the Sabres are on the clock. We're waiting for them now. That's pick 14? No, 14. So that is the McGroarty pick in theory. If they're doing, but again, like I said, to me, if you're the Jets, you just wasted 2 years of development for a kid, even though technically he was developed through Michigan. But I mean, you spend time, you send your development. I mean, McGroarty in that article by Mike talked about how, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Jimmy Roy, Mike Keane, Craig Heisinger. I don't think he mentioned Heisinger, but maybe he did. But point is, he mentioned a bunch of the guys from the organization went down to watch him. So, you spend a lot of time and effort putting into this player, right? When he had that spleen injury, Jimmy Roy was there in the hospital with him because he happened to be scouting him. So there's a lot of time and effort put into that player. So it seems unlikely at this point. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I don't know about you.
Before we hopped on, I said pick 15. Like after that, well, obviously never say never. Like there could be pick 19, which I know is Vegas and would be hilarious, but say it would be that, I think, and something in a McGroarty deal rather than just a straight 1-for-1 swap.
Well,
I think
not happening because the pick is in.
The pick is in. I see. Yeah, they would have had to have happened by now. I think if it was just straight Rutger for the pick 1-for-1, which I obviously isn't happening with Buffalo here, and I don't think will happen unless it's a later pick in the first round and it's a part of a bigger package, maybe.
And to answer, I think Derek's question, Derek Schmidt asked, who was Elliot just talking to? That was Danny Briere, the GM of the Philadelphia Flyers. So we were talking about Jets 1.0 and 2.0, and you were talking about confusion. And one of the questions that was asked by Elliot Friedman, actually it might have been Elliot Friedman who asked. It was a couple nights ago. Gary Bettman was doing a presser. I thought Eric Engels asked the question of Sportsnet, but I think Friedman actually asked it. And Eric Engels, who's the one who tweeted it out, but he asked Gary Bettman about the history of the Winnipeg Jets. And now we've been talking about this Utah Hockey Club. Well, with the Utah Hockey Club, obviously being the Arizona Coyotes, who are, of course, the Winnipeg Jets, what happens with the history? And so Gary Bettman was asked about that. And his response was, and I'll read it to the folks, because this, I think, is something that folks in Winnipeg are going to be passionate about. Asked if it's possible original Winnipeg Jets history records could be returned to the team. He called it an excellent question, but said it was too early to say. Now, I'm someone who mitigates this by saying when I'm qualifying all-time records, I say this is a Jets 1.0 record, or combined Jets 1.0, or Jets 2.0, or Jets 2.0 and the Thrashers. But I understand the idea. So I suspect I know what most folks will say, but some folks don't care. But where do you fall on that sort of combining the history? Because look, I mean, if you look at, there's all sorts of teams that have been moved about and about and about, right? And eventually, like, for example, like the New Jersey Devils were once the Colorado Rockies, right? But it's interesting because if you look at like Colorado, they use the Rockies jersey, even though it's the Devils who were that franchise, right? The Minnesota North Stars, one of the best, most iconic jerseys of all time. Dallas Stars were using that, right? And then, but now Minnesota, it's confusing because Minnesota uses the colors. And I know that in basketball, teams that have left and then come back, their histories have been returned.
Yeah.
And so from your point of view, it's, and you're a younger guy, Connor, so you weren't necessarily, kicking when the Jets 1.0 were here.
So. Yeah.
But from your point of view, from, your pay attention, like, Pete is saying the Kovalchuk records are meaningless in the PEG, and it's a fair point, right? Like it's not something that resonates, but yet if you look at the numbers, Kovalchuk, if you go to Hockey Reference right now, Kovalchuk will be top 5 to 10 of most goal records, assists, points. So again, the Jets are slowly, the Jets are interestingly, I remember, I think it was last year towards the end of the year, the Jets had played more games in the NHL than the Thrashers had. So they kind of overtake them. And a lot of their records now reflect that, in the sense that Wheeler and Scheifele, those guys have taken over and they've kind of supplanted a lot of the Thrashers guys. But from your point of view, what is kind of especially someone who maybe wasn't connected to the old Smythe division days. I'm not going to ask T. Conapoli. I know what his answer would be, but from your point of view, what would you kind of see as a kind of a just result in terms of that resolution?
I'm definitely not in the, you brought up the two sides of it. I'm not in the I don't care completely camp. And I wasn't here for Jets 1.0. So I think it would be easy for me to just say, well, I don't care. I wasn't here for the Hrabchak days. I wasn't here for the Smythe division. It doesn't really matter to me, but I do think I think like honestly, I'm seeing things in chat too. The records should be geographical, in my opinion. So Colorado, they go to New Jersey, but the Avalanche come to Colorado. They should have the Rockies records, and the Jets, when they came back, they should regain the Jets records. If the Atlanta Thrashers come back in the next 2 years, which has been rumored, they should get their records back as well. I just think it can travel with the franchise, but when the team comes back, like if Arizona comes back, which has been rumored as well in the next couple of years, I think
not
that
with
the
Alex
records,
Murillo, that's for sure.
but he's out. I don't
Yeah,
know if you
he's
saw
done.
that. He's
Yeah, I know.
done, which
That
is
was part of
great.
that was part of the
great news
reason
for
why.
Arizona.
But that's part of the reason why I wrote that piece on illegalcurve.com, because I essentially said, like, he's done, he's walked away. So, and again, like I said, there's a little bit of overlap, right? Like a guy like Tempo Numanen, who was one of like my, growing up, who was just an unbelievable Jets defenseman. He played for the Coyotes. Keith Tkachuk played for the Coyotes. Shane Doan only played one season with the Jets, played most of his career with the Coyotes. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap, similar to guys like Blake Wheeler, right? Blake Wheeler played, I think he played 26 games, for the Thrashers when he got traded from Boston. And then, of course, almost 90% of his records are with Winnipeg. And Brian Little, of course, more so because he played a little bit longer. But
exactly.
Yeah. So there's that element. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I basically what I was saying is I think it should be geographical now that the owner is now no longer there in Arizona as well. And the team has moved. Maybe when they come back, I think they should regain the records, which will be weird because, Clayton Keller, like he was with Arizona, and Arizona might get a team back in like 3 years, and Clayton Keller won't even be like 28 by then, which will be super weird to think about. But I do think Gary Bettman's answer, I forget if you read the quote or not, but I do think that it was maybe hopeful in a sense where he was just, more worried about the $1 billion transaction that they were doing more than the Winnipeg records.
Yeah.
But I think that there should be some hope here that the records that Dale Hrabchak, that Jack brought up there, do get returned. And I think across the NHL, it should be geographical when the team returns. When they don't, like Atlanta, their records should stay with the Jets until they get a team back, because that's where their hockey history ended, they went to Winnipeg. And if Atlanta gets a team back, then it's back. Like their hockey history is over until they get a team back, right? Like
ironically,
that's just how I see it. I don't know.
But ironically, as you're speaking, the $1 man, Chris Draper, who was a Winnipeg Jet and traded to the Detroit Red Wings, he's making the pick at 15 overall for those same Detroit Red Wings that he played and won Stanley Cups with. But I think Disgruntled Weed has it best. I'm going to highlight this comment because it says, I don't understand the idea of keeping another team's records. When a new city buys a team, it's starting a new leaf. They don't want the old record, so why not just hand it back? And he's right, or she's right, but I'm going to go on the he, but I'm not certain, so I'm not going to try and misgender them. But the point I'm making, the point they're making that I'm agreeing with, is like, and I know that the Coyotes had like their ring of honor, and Hrabchak was on it, Solani was on it. It's weird, right? And if you think about it, what did the Jets do? The Jets honor before, they, first of all, the name, right? They didn't even have a choice. Right. I don't know that they wanted that, but the fans would not have accepted, the Winnipeg Polar Bears or whatever, Winnipeg Mosquitoes, whatever the name was they were thinking about. So, the fans have that connection, and that comment is right. I mean, you don't need to be told. Like we witnessed, if you grew up in that era, you watched Hrabchak. You watched Solani, you watched Housley, you watched Carlisle, you watched Paul McLean, you watched Doug Smale, you watched Bobby Essenza, you heard Kirk Keelback make those, amazing calls, Don Whitman. So you don't need someone in New York to tell you about your history.
Right.
I think it's, again, like I said, like at the end of the day, when there's a Dale Hrabchak statue, Dale Hrabchak never played. Last I checked, he didn't play for the Jets 2.0, but there's a reason why there's a Dale Hrabchak statue on Hargrave, right? Yeah. There's a reason why, Thomas Steen and
next up is the Ilya Kovalchuk statue, though.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard.
Exactly. So and now T. Konopali's wanting me to mention like Chris King and Ty Domi, Kevin Donnelly, which Donnelly, Mike Donnelly. Kevin Donnelly was an actor. Actually, I think he lives down the street from me. And Darren Shannon or his brother, Daryl Shannon. So, which the Shannon brothers, there's a million of them. But I think at the end of the day, like I said, you don't need someone telling you what your history is. But I just think from I hate to say it, but to make my job easier, when I'm looking up records for the all-time records, which I like to do, I think sometimes it makes for interesting, conversation if guys about to clip something, especially when it's Jets 2.0 versus Jets 1.0. It's nice to be able to look at that and see it quickly versus like having like signed it this like again, like I said, having to be, especially because then if I mention, oh, well, this is with the Thrashers, folks get pissed. So
yeah.
Again, like I said, it's one of those situations that it's an interesting one. Well, we're 2 hours into this show. It's been a long show already. We appreciate everybody coming along with us for this ride. I forgot to take a break. We didn't even take a break once this whole time, Connor. So we'll go for a few more minutes and then we're just going to probably wrap it up. I mean, we do have 3 hours of talking. It doesn't appear Connor, I had said to Connor when we were originally talking about doing the show, we'll do like a first 10, 11 picks, and then maybe we'll get off because if the Jets don't make a trade before then, Connor convinced me, twisted my arm. He said, let's go to at least 15, Dave. So I said, okay,
we're at 16 with the Blues.
We're at 16. So maybe we'll get to 16, 17, 18. We'll see where we can get to. And then we'll wrap it up because again, like I said, we got a long day tomorrow. IllegalCurve.com, of course, your home for all the latest Jets and Moose news. We've got the video shot by Winnipeg Sports Talk's Michael Remus with Kevin Cheveldale's interview. That's up on the website, as well as Darren Dreger's comments from the Insiders chat yesterday. But I guess my takeaway, I mean, this has been a great conversation between you and I, and of course,
thank you for having me.
The people on the chat. We appreciate everyone joining us, spending your Friday night here on Illegal Curve. But I mean, my takeaway really is how little, like, what happened tonight. Like I can't get over the fact that it's almost like everybody was so in awe by everything that was going on inside the sphere that they're like, it was almost like, like, whoa, and they couldn't make a trade because the fact that the only thing that we saw was a trade between 12 and 11. I mean, that's pretty
13 and 12.
13 and 12. 13 and 12. Facts matter.
Your point stands. Your point remains. This is what drives me nuts about the NHL sometimes.
By the way, sorry, Connor, just quickly.
Yeah.
Rob Mahoney's telling me to turn the fireplace on. It's right there, Rob. That's an outdoor scene. It's rainy though, because it's raining in Manitoba. So I wanted to keep it consistent, but I also didn't I usually have a roaring fire behind me, but people get mad because they're like, Dave, it's summer, like it's 30 degrees in Winnipeg. You can't have a roaring fire. So I got no roaring fire, but I wanted to have consistent. So I've got the fire in there, but it's kind of more of a rainy scene. So, being consistent here with Manitoba. Continue. Sorry. I could have just mentioned that in the chat, but I want to make sure Rob knew.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering about that too, because, every time I've tuned in, I've seen the fire behind you. Anyways, this is what kind of upsets me about the NHL sometimes is people fail to, like, out of the 4 major sports in North America between, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL, the NHL is kind of the worst at this, where there's this crazy week. Oh, these crazy trades are going to happen. What's going to happen with Jake Gensel? And what's the most what's the craziest story that's happened this week? If you had to, off the top of your head, like what is the most shocking thing that has happened this week? That was supposed to be a chaotic week full of trades. Like, okay, there's been buzz around Martin Necas. There's been buzz about trading these picks, but again, there's been a swap from 13 to 12.
Are you saying what's been rumored or what's actually happened?
No, what's actually happened. This,
by the way, the Blues are making their
rumors.
And the Blues are making their picks.
So but my whole point is, like, in the NBA and the MLB and the NFL, there's rumors, and then things actually happen. Crazy things happen. Where in the NHL, it just gets hyped up to be crazy, and then nothing really happens. Like, I feel like I've sat here and watched the draft 5 years in a row where all these teams are hearing offers on their pick and not a single pick gets traded, except for, okay, a team moved from 13 to 12. But that, like, yawn. Anyways,
yeah, no, I mean,
that's like, that the NHL gets kind of overhyped in this scenario. Every now and again, it's like free agent frenzy. It's like, okay, everyone's going to re-sign with the team that they were with, and maybe a few guys will sign for over market value. Like, it's not what it is in other sports, but it gets hyped up to be.
No, and I
don't know if you agree. That might not be.
No, I definitely. Well, I mean, it'd be hard to argue with you right now since absolutely nothing has happened for the last 2 hours of this show. But No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's the NHL is vanilla, to put it that way. And look, I don't think you need to do things just for the sake of like, oh my God, we got TV.
To
We
make a
got to
trade.
make
Yeah.
sure that
Right.
we make a trade if it doesn't make sense, clearly. But at the same time,
Right.
like this is it is a pretty boring element in that regard. You're right. If you look at the NBA, they'll trade like half a team for like one player.
Right.
You know what I
8
mean?
first-round
So
picks.
that's what I mean. Like
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, like I saw someone joking. They're like, the Minnesota Timberwolves are trading their 2041 first rounder for
Yeah.
X, So yeah, there's no question about it that these teams, like, but at the same time, again, like as an organization, you know what you want. And a lot of teams, I guess, were able to see a player that they thought was a one. I guess that's the one thing with less certainty. And I'm not going to again pretend, I'm not going to put myself out there as if I'm some sort of draft expert, but I would just say that, if you look at these teams, I guess it seems like there was a lot of opportunity. And so teams clearly were targeting certain types of players for their organizations. They obviously got what they wanted. And because of it, with the exception of the Flyers, they felt, why would we trade? We can get someone who's going to help our organization, not now, but will in years to come. So from their point of view, that's, again, like I said, you don't make that trade. And for Kevin Cheveldayoff, despite the fact, and again, like I said, 31 teams essentially have said, we're looking for Rutger McGroarty to be joining the Montreal Canadiens, the Ottawa Senators, the Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers, the Florida Panthers, like literally every single team. Well, at the end of the day, either those teams didn't have the capital with which to deal for him, which, in a team with teams like Florida or Boston, not a surprise because of course, they've dealt a lot of they don't have a lot of prospects.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Florida, they won the Stanley Cup with 4 of their own drafted players.
Yeah.
And I think Vegas probably a similar number. So it's an interesting sort of, scenario where those teams have been able to get it done in the last couple of years without the drafts. But I mean, of course, look at Edmonton. It's not exactly the same because they have drafted a ton of those guys. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little surprising. But again, at the end of the day, it's the nature of the beast. And look, the Jets could still, the night is not over. We'll still have content up on illegalcurve.com, that website again, illegalcurve.com, your home, Connor, of course, for all the latest Jets and Moose news. Join us tomorrow, Illegal Curve Hockey Show, starting at 9 a.m. I will be doing a lot less talking because I've done enough with Connor tonight. We'll let Ezzy and Drew get the lion's share. And, those shows are always better. See, I like doing, no offense, Connor, and I'm not saying I love doing a show with you. You know that. But I do like it when there's 3. And I'll tell you why. Because when there's 3, I allow those 2 guys to talk. And then if there's news or anything, you'll see my little sausage fingers going around on the computer, typing away, getting the website updated. And that way I can, it's a little bit easier. If I don't really mean to do that to you though, if I'm in the middle of talking and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta, Jets made a trade. I got to figure that out. But so we'll be chatting until we'll hope that at least the first Jets pick of the day, we presume 37th overall, and we'll figure that out and maybe get to talk to him from the draft floor. We don't know. I'm not entirely certain what the setup is. I'll touch base with the Jets folks tomorrow morning. Okay. Any final thoughts, Connor? I mean, we've talked about everything really. We talked about the Jets history. We talked about Sean Monahan. We talked about Brad Lambert. We've talked about Dylan DeMello. We've talked about Rutger McGroarty. Is there anything we've missed, or do we think kind of hit all the Jets topics for the last week? I'd say
the NHL awards. We did it all. We really covered a lot, and the Jets didn't give anything new for us to talk about tonight. So I think we covered our bases, and you'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow as well, including a new draft pick, provided the Jets hold on to it. They're 37th overall, so really early in the second round. That's from the PLD trade. That's Montreal's pick. You saw Montreal hold on to their pick at number 5. That's the pick the Jets have in the second round. So the draft, like you said earlier, starts at 10:30 tomorrow. Jets will be picking, I don't know, right around there, 10:45, maybe 11 o'clock if they really drag out the second round for some reason. I'll be looking forward to seeing who they pick, and I would assume it's going to be a defenseman given how the organizational needs. But honestly, at that range, you could go best player available. A really interesting spot for the Jets, so it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, the Jets have 5 picks to make tomorrow. But I will say, like, it was funny because Murat did an article with, was it Pronman? the other day, and like it was like a combined article, and he Promin's like, here's my projections, and he had projected the whole thing, but he had the Jets taking 2 goalies, and I thought to myself, like, why? Like, I don't get it.
Goal-
Like, I understand, like,
Yeah, no.
organizationally, you want to have depth, but you have the WHL goalie of the year in Thomas Milic, who from 2 years ago, and now
Mhm.
he was an outstanding rookie for the Moose last year. And then you've got Dom DeVincentis, who was the outstanding goalie of the OHL 2 years ago, and he had a good year last year. Fell off a little bit, but he's he had a strong second half. And you've got him, and so I found that a little bit curious. I was like, that to me was like, at that point, why would you do that? You would. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe if you thought you'd take one, but even that, to be honest with you, I think that's one too many. I don't know why you would do that. I know T. Konopali's asking about Manitobans at the draft. Connor, any thought as to, do we know where who was the top rated Manitoban? I know Paulie Edmonds, play-by-play voice of the Jets on 680 CJOB. He had an article just out recently about he put out a Substack about exactly, Substack. Not that I know what that is, but Paulie did. And here, let me just look for it right now. Actually, Connor, you talk for a few seconds, and I'll do the I'll just give the Paul Edmonds one, because I don't want T. Konopali to be upset that we didn't give him an insight. We call ourselves a Manitoba based show, so we got to make sure that we got to give out a shout out.
I will say,
Okay.
I know that this draft, I'm not sure about T. Konopali's question. I haven't done enough research on who would be available in that spot for the Jets that are Manitobans or in general. But I do know that this draft, and T. Konopali will like to hear this, is full of like Western Canadian defensemen that are big and physical. And you've seen a lot of them go already. But that's who the Jets are being mocked at that second round, 37th overall spot, is a big defenseman, because that seems to be where the league is going. That seems to be what the Jets need in their prospect pool. They have Elias Salomonson, who might be a Jet in the next 1 to 3 years. But outside of that, you've got Ville Heinola, who will be graduating to the NHL soon, we presume. And then behind that, you don't really have much. So it looks to be a defenseman. There's a lot of Canadian defensemen, a lot of big physical Canadian defensemen in that spot. And I think that's where the Jets will be going. But like I said, it's the second round, so you can really take any avenue that you really want in that spot.
Okay, and I know some folks are talking about backup goaltender. Kenny Weeb just had an article about Laurent Brossoit leaving, and we know that seems like a foregone conclusion. Again, Kevin Cheveldayoff talked about that. He did basically say, he's done well for the team, and he's given himself an opportunity. So, and Calvin Pickard from Winnipeg, I see that his name is being mentioned. Of course, he backed up the Oilers, and he got a new 2-year deal. So he's staying. The Winnipegger is staying put in Alberta for the next 2 seasons. But who knows? We'll see what happens in that regard. But I'm going to say, here's the Manitobans, the full list. Hopefully, it as it is one. No, it did not. Dawson Cowan, from the goaltender from Warren, plays for the Spokane Chiefs. Clark Caswell from Brandon, he plays for Swift Current. Luke Misselbacher, he's a winger from Marchand. He is playing for the Swift Current Broncos. Josh Fluker from Boisemaine, although Jamie Thomas said it like Boisevin, or he completely got it wrong.
Yeah.
And he's playing for the Wenatchee Wild. And Gavin Hodnett from Winnipeg, who's playing for the Edmonton Oil Kings. So there's the 5 Manitobans projected to go. I don't know the order. I don't know where in the draft those guys are supposed to go, but that's courtesy of our friend Paul Edmonds, who his Substack. So be sure you give Paul a shout out if you know where the Manitobans were in. Okay, Connor, it's been a long evening, and we've got a big day / afternoon. But like I said, I'm not complaining. This is my favorite time of the year. It's like Christmas, which is weird because I'm Jewish. But regardless, I feel like it's kind of like Christmas right now, because it's so much fun to watch these these prospects get drafted, whether they're from Manitoba, from the WHL, the OHL, NCAA, overseas, wherever it is. They it's kind of like hope springs eternal for teams and their pools and stuff like that. So a lot of fun, great times. Thanks a lot for joining us this evening. We, Connor, as I always say, is an up and coming. I don't even know if I can call you an up and coming anymore. You've been kind of in the scene already for
been here for
years,
a year now.
Well, yeah. Well, no, but a couple of years, because remember,
maybe a little bit longer.
You started with me with the Moose, so come on, let's not forget our Moose, your Moose days. I still have a Moose connection. You've graduated from the Moose.
Yeah. Hopefully
So,
next year I'll be there a little bit more.
What's that?
So
Why do I
hopefully
feel like
next year
that?
I'll be there a
I
little
feel
bit
like you're
more.
just placating me. I feel like you're just saying that, but
I
I don't
said
really.
that last year. That
I
is
was going to
true.
say, I'm pretty
That
sure
is
you
true.
said that last year, so I don't know that that's true. By the way, speaking of the Moose, I want to give a shout out to Regan O'Grady. He was he did color with Daniel Fink, and he just got hired as the assistant coach with the Owen Sound Attack in the OHL.
Wow,
So
nice.
he's leaving the play-by-play booth. Well, Daniel did the play-by-play. He was doing color, which is what I did sometimes. And I did a couple times last year, actually. Not as many as I usually do, but anyways, big shout out to Connor is what I'm saying. Sorry, let's get back to Connor. Let's not make it about me.
Thank you.
Because Connor is, like I said, great addition to our community here in Winnipeg, covering all things. I can't even say all things hockey because Connor's been covering Sea Bears. He's been covering Gold Eyes. He's been covering the Bombers. So maybe Connor, give a little shout out to what you're doing right now to let folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on. Every time I've been on IC, it's been an absolute blast. And this time was no different. So thank you. Winnipeg Sports Talk, I'm doing a ton of video content over there. Most notably, my Winnipeg Sports Talk weekly shows. Very similar to my Jets Weekly, which a lot of people loved during the season. But now it's all the summer sports. Like you said, I usually lead off with Jets news. So if they make a trade, if they do make a selection, I'll lead off with that on Monday. But also covering the Blue Bombers, the Sea Bears, the Gold Eyes, what's happening in Winnipeg. I still hand out my 3 stars of the week and things like that. And then writing also at the Hockey Writers, still covering the Jets, everything that they do this offseason in written form. I'll have it over there. But my main focus this summer is the video content with Winnipeg Sports Talk. Got a lot of fun things coming. So stay tuned to the WST YouTube. I'm sure a lot of people in chat already are, given the fact that Huss and Remo are in Vegas right now, as we saw on this episode. But stay tuned to that. I'll be putting a lot of content out there. Thanks, Dave.
All right, no problem. And by the way, hopefully CW is wrong, but I do agree it would be hilarious if the Jets trade into the late
Right when
first
we go
round
off
today. And he said he finished that comment off right after the show is done. Well, let's hope that isn't the case. But the truth is, CW, as much as I would regret it, I would be fine because that would mean I could devote pure 100% focus to a little site that we know is called illegalcurve.com, your home for Jets and Moose news. This has been a special edition of Illegal Curve Hockey. We thank you for joining us. We thank you for spending your Friday night with us. Like I said, if there is any breaking news, it will be on the website. And join us tomorrow. Drew, Ezzy, myself, maybe Connor, if he joins us late. If he's got some time around 11, he could maybe join us. Jim Toth joining us at 9:30. We'll be talking Jets. We'll hopefully try not to have too much of a complete recap of everything we talked about today. But again, I'll just try and keep quiet so those two guys can share their thoughts and get some fresh insight from them. But thanks a lot for spending your time with us here this evening. And we will be back tomorrow, 9:00. This has been an special edition of Illegal Curve Hockey.